1, and we should be live now. There we go. Mr. TheFew, welcome to the
Hello.
Late Night Crew Show. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. It's
Thanks
been a
so
good
much.
week.
Thanks so much for coming here. It's been a good week. That's good. We don't hear lots of that in 2020. You know what I mean?
Well, you make the best you can, but thanks for having me. It's good. I haven't been on a show for a little bit of time, a little bit of while going on here. I don't know. Star Citizen.
What was the last show that you've been on?
I don't know. It's a while. Maybe probably Captain's Table or something.
Okay. That's
Yep.
Astropubs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's cool. So how's your 2020 been? Because I mean, I haven't really talked to you at all, and I hate to go over the same old nonsense, but I'm genuinely curious what your COVID experience has been like.
Sure. I know 2020's been I mean, it's not ideal in some ways, but it's been pretty good for the most part. I'm back in Oregon nowadays. Working in a job that I generally like, which is good. A lot of work from home basically all the time. I never leave my place. But yeah, I've been just kind of enjoying seeing my friends and family that I hadn't been able to hang out with for a long time here in Oregon, and working on side projects, streaming very casually. But yeah, I mean, I can't complain. I've been really lucky in a lot of ways. I feel like in this whole 2020 year. So
Is your family in Oregon?
a lot of it, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them. I mean, I don't know. It's I have some family like in the East Coast and whatnot, but overall, Oregon is kind of what I consider home. I grew up here when I was younger, so
Yeah, that's cool. I'm on West Coast as well. I'm in on Vancouver Island. If you've ever
hmm,
been out there before.
I am very familiar with it. Yeah,
You
that's
said
cool.
your mom lived in Canada at a point, right?
No, but I do have Canadian relatives. Yeah, like Kamloops, British
Oh
Columbia. I don't
yeah.
know if you've ever been up there. Yeah,
Yep, Kamloops, absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. I love it up there. Yeah, I Vancouver Island. I've been to a few times, but I love Vancouver, the city, quite a bit. It's pretty nice. I like it. I could see myself living there someday, but who knows?
That's cool. Is it like do you live in a city right now or are you kind of like
Hmm.
in the sticks? I don't know.
I live not in a city. I
Not in a
live in a
city.
town,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know what you call it. I live in a town of about 60,000 people or something
That's
like
a
that. It's a
pretty
college
big
town.
town.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like a Canadian metropolis right there. Like all of our
Okay.
communities are so small. So 60,000 I think is pretty big.
Yeah, I mean it's not small, but it's not like a city. You know what I mean? I don't know. Um, I don't know. I get if you call Portland a city, people get pissed. I don't know. Everybody has their soapboxes they want to stand on. But I spent the last 10 years living in LA, New York City, and Austin, Texas. Um, and Austin is like 1 million people, and it's the smallest of the three. So it's just kind of coming back to a town of 60,000 is nice. I like it. It's just definitely different.
It's so last time I talked with you, you're in Austin, so I was quite
Hmm.
surprised to hear that you're in Oregon now. So I don't know what happened in Austin. Last time I talked to you, you seemed pretty happy with Austin. So
I was. Austin's a great city. I mean, it's a great city apart from the lack of mountains, but um, it's I didn't like my job there.
I
I
see.
actually hated the company I was working for, but I'm not going to go into naming names. But so I quit that job, and I could have found another job there, but I was kind of just like, well, screw it. I'm just going to go back to Oregon. I've been thinking about moving back to the land of mountains for a while. And to be honest, I've been really happy with my choice. I still want to go back to Austin. Like I have good friends there that I want to see in Austin, but obviously COVID has put a bosh on any kind of travel or I don't know, things like that. So
Mountains are important. I understand the mountain
hmm
need. I often think that like mountains are like just a means of keeping humble because you wake up every morning and you see how small of a human being you are. So I think
yeah, there's an aspect of that. I think for me, mountains, I grew up my earliest memories were I grew up in the coastal range in Oregon. So as a young child, so it's like my earliest memories are the forest and me kind of like running through the trees and stuff like that and climbing the trees and things. So it's kind of a place that feels like home to me. Like I actually feel sometimes more at home in the middle of the woods than I do in the city. But specifically mountains, like especially tall mountains that like rise above the tree line. Those aren't necessarily as much home, but I like the meditative aspect of being away from society, but if I don't have a goal to like a thing that I'm trying to accomplish, then I get like kind of restless, I feel like. So climbing and hiking mountains, I feel like is this like balance for me that allows me to be away from society, be in nature, but also have kind of a goal that focuses me that allows me to think about everything else. You know, it's like so you're like hiking up a mountain, you know, okay, my goal is to get to the top of this thing and then you're doing that, and then while you're doing that, putting one foot in front of the other, if I feel like your brain's free to think about life and your decisions and what you're doing and how you're screwing up or like I don't know, it just lets you like reevaluate your life because you've kind of like focused. I don't know. You're focused on a goal, but it frees you up to think about other things instead of just like sitting down in the middle of nowhere and doing nothing. Then you kind of are like, well, what should I do? And you're kind of distracted with like the day to day of just like I don't know, trying to not be bored or find something to do. But while you're hiking, I feel like, at least for me, it distracts you enough so that you can actually just sit there and think and philosophize or reevaluate what you're doing in your life. I don't know. It's kind of meditative for me. I like it.
I'm the same way. I feel well. I feel quite similar to that. I mean, I just did a 40-kilometer walk last weekend.
That's a long ways.
Yeah, I know, right? It was half crazy, but I what I tend to do is like I have a website that I work on the side. So
Hmm.
like it's in Ruby on Rails, so I'll work on it,
Okay.
and then whenever I come to a spot where I can't figure it out, then I'll pick up my crap and I'll start walking somewhere else. And I
Yeah.
take a lawn chair with me everywhere I go. So like I get a couple kilometers down the road or something, then I set up
Yeah.
my lawn chair and I just start coding again, and then I get stuck, and then I just
That's kind of
rinse
cool.
and repeat.
I've never heard of that. Like,
Yeah.
how do you code? Do you have like during that 40-kilometer walk, you have internet connection the whole time, like just like cellular connection or something?
I mean, the PHP people out there are going to shout at me for saying this, but like I love Ruby on Rails because you don't need any internet connection at all. There's no like libraries you're connected to or you need to always be connected to.
But
It's
what are you developing if it's not hooked up to the internet?
well, it's I just build
I don't
features
know. I'm
for
just
my
asking honestly. Yeah, I was curious. Yeah.
I
What
built
got you into?
mm,
Sorry, go for it.
I built features for my website. That's it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Ruby on
Okay,
Rails.
cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What got you into like Ruby? I don't haven't done a lot of development much recently in my life. But like I'm always curious. Like people tend to like build in what they've become accustomed to or used to. But I was just curious. Like did you decide one day, oh, I'm going to learn Ruby, or like how'd you get into Ruby?
It's a really long story, actually, but I
Oh,
currently work for Shopify, if you're familiar with them, and their
no.
platform is built on Ruby on Rails. So I would say
Okay,
that they've fanned the flames of programming. But I used to be like a WordPress, Joomla, Drupal developer,
sure.
and then like after extracting a certain amount of hair from my scalp, I met with some other coders that were Ruby and Rails devs, and they were so chill, and
Yeah.
they showed me the way, and they gave me the Kool-Aid, and man, it's just so easy in comparison, and everything is predictable, and there's debugging, and I don't know, man.
Sure.
And
Yeah, obviously Drupal's not the way, but like
no, I know, right?
I mean, people will argue and fight over like the best platform or the best like, whatever language or who knows what, but like everybody should be able to at least agree that Drupal sucks. Like
I
don't
hope so.
don't use Drupal ever.
all the,
Hmm.
all the cool kids now are building in JavaScript, and I think that's going to be the way
Yeah.
of the future. I don't think there's any way around it. It's just like
JavaScript is amazing nowadays.
it's
Like ES
true.
2016 is just like it's turned JavaScript into a fully functional just like language with like classes and extendability and just like I mean obviously I don't I'm talking about these things. I built hobby wise stuff in Node.js, but it's been a while since I've worked professionally as a programmer. Um, but still, Node is just it's pros and cons. It can pull your hair out as well, but I don't know. There's a weird like power you get from like microservices and things, and I think that there's a tendency sometimes in I don't know like outside of microservices what backend JavaScript's used for, but I know it's super popular in like microservices specifically. But there is a tendency where developers or like whatever they find something they really like Node.js or something, and they tend to just like, well, I'm going to use it for everything because they love it so much. And I think that sometimes you rarely is there a single tool that does everything. And I think that as a developer, you kind of just have to embrace like the things that are good at what they're meant to be good at, and then I don't know, use other things for their purpose. It's like you don't hit nails into like wood with wrenches. You use those to like I don't know. I'm whatever. I'm just rambling. I'm drinking beer. It's Friday.
I think the metaphor is accurate though, except I wouldn't say a hammer. It's more like plasticine or Play-Doh in JavaScript's case, and they sculpt it to whatever they think is the tool that's
Yeah.
applicable.
Yeah. But I will say that JavaScript is amazing.
Yes.
It used to be like kind of like not very powerful. But ever since ES 2016 and whatnot, it's or 2015 and 16 words, whatever. But whenever they started adding like classes and like the let and like all those other like tools and stuff to the language, it started to become really cool, like really easy to use. So
I struggle with it. It's my biggest problem. I don't
yeah.
know. It's funny at my job. I do everything I can to avoid JavaScript. Like a problem will come
Hmm.
in, they'll have to add to a website, and they'll be like, "Fix this problem or do this." And it's like any other person would just spend 10 minutes, throw in a JavaScript piece of duct
it's
tape, and
it's
that's
pretty
it.
intuitive.
I don't know about that. I mean, you got to know so much about the browser, and I think that's my thing. Like,
Not necessarily. Like JavaScript is nowadays, especially maybe not like 10 years ago, but JavaScript nowadays is really environmentless language. It can be used for a multitude of things, and in fact, a lot of JavaScript is never touches a browser. Like it's entirely back end server side code, so you can do a lot with it. But yeah, definitely, of course, you have to know browsers. If you're doing front end JavaScript, you kind of have to understand the environment you're working in. But yeah,
so
anyways.
what do you really do then if you don't do development?
Well, I mean, I'm the worst. I manage developers and engineers. I have a team. I basically for the last like I don't know for the last 8 years of my life, I feel like mostly just been in some sort of middle management-ish kind of role. So basically, it's the role you go into when you want to lose all practical skill sets
Hmm. Okay.
and not be able to contribute in any kind of real meaningful way. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's like there's value that you can contribute in that kind of a space, but I feel like it's in some ways it's less satisfying than being an individual contributor as a developer, where you're just like putting headphones on, like in a dark room, just like fingers on keyboard, coding away. But I was never a great developer. I was always like an okay developer. Like there was always that guy in the group who was just like a wizard, and you were kind of like, okay, well, I can keep up, but like, I was never like that cream of the crop. So I don't know. Maybe I was always intended to be middle management. I don't know. Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know what you consider middle management, but
Hmm.
before I worked for Shopify, I used to be a Scrum Master and a
Nice.
product owner as well at one company. Is that middle management? Would you consider that middle management?
I think that it's middle management if you believe you're middle management.
I see.
um, but yeah, I mean, I think that like when you move away from the idea of being an individual contributor, right? Like when your primary job or responsibility is to um cohesively deliver the results of a group of people or something, maybe. I don't know. But I think that you can find joy in everything.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So yeah.
Well, that's cool. The few.
I might have just got kicked out of the game.
No, that's fine because I closed it as well. No, that
Oh,
doesn't
you did?
matter.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
no, that's fine.
Uh,
I did want to mention something about your name because I thought it's kind of interesting.
okay, what's that?
So you got your name from a random trip in Europe, and some people wrote your name more or less on a book.
Yeah.
Illuminati,
Yeah, something
conspiracy
like that.
theory.
Illuminati.
Yeah,
I
something like that. But
think
like,
it was probably a couple kids from Iowa, but like if
is that what it
gonna, I'm just gonna go with Illuminati.
was? But like most of the people I know call you Luke. So like, do you
Yeah.
mind that people call you your first name on
Mm.
the Twitchverse?
No, I don't. I'm
Yeah,
pretty open about it.
yeah.
I mean, it can be weird in certain contexts for people. They're like, "Hey, the few." And it's like, oh, I don't know. Like, um, Luke is pretty natural. So
I think that
yeah, I'm pretty cool with it.
I think
I it's weird that some people you don't know their names. It's like, I
it's
mean, I'm good
true.
friends with Sergeant Tickles, and I'm like, like you know what I mean? You're like, wait, what's your name? Your first name? But then there's other people like Astropub, his name's Paul, and so like you if people are really open about their first name, it's kind of easy to think about them in that way. Texas Skulls is like Daniel, right? So everybody knows, like, well, not everybody, a lot of people know he's Daniel. He calls himself Daniel a lot of times. And so it makes it easy. But when somebody never like talks about their first name, then it's always weird when you're like, wait, what's your name? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you like are open about it, but like, what's your name? I actually don't know. You don't have to tell me if it's like top secret.
It's not top secret. It's just weird, and I don't want to give people false
Mm,
expectations because nobody calls me by my first name.
mm,
Nobody does. I'm one of those people who there's a nickname for everything. It's like I don't know where I am unless I hear how my name is called. So that's why I
hmm.
just go by my internet name, and like this is how people in Star Citizen identify me.
Where'd you get your Star Citizen name?
Oh goodness gracious. So I am like the Cloud Strife of the Ultima series. So like I just ripped off a really well, it wasn't popular. He was kind of like an Easter egg character, but I liked his name a lot in Ultima 5. And what happened was he that character ended up in Ultima 6 and Ultima 7 and Ultima 8, and he
Mhm.
actually had a little bit of a position within Wing Commander as well. So yeah, Segellion I just ripped off of. Sorry,
Yeah, that's cool.
but he was a cool
Ultima, that's
character.
the Richard Garriott game,
That's
right?
the
Like,
Richard Garriott game. You're damn right. And when I met Richard Garriott at the Falcon Heavy launch, I introduced myself to Segellion, and he laughed so hard about it.
oh, really? That's really cool that you met him. I mean, he's been to space,
Yeah, yeah. Well, he was the first space tourist, and he brought James
something like that.
Doohan's ashes up to the International Space Station.
That's cool.
How cool is that, right?
Yeah, that is pretty cool. I
Um,
don't know.
but just as an FYI, Segellion used to be this guy in Ultima who lived in the tropics, like the southern hemisphere. He had
Hmm.
his own island. He had a castle, and he had like all of these servants and stuff like that.
Okay.
It was the coolest thing ever. But nobody knows about this character. He was an Easter egg. Anyways, that's that.
That's where it comes from.
That's where it
Interesting.
comes
I've
from.
always like when I was younger, I can't remember how young I was. Maybe early high school. Like 2000 or not 2000, 1998 ish. I can't remember when Ultima Online came out, but I remember hearing about this like game, this MMO where like everything went and you could like run around this whole universe. And it was the first time I ever heard of something like an MMO. And I never played it ever in my life, but I remember being fascinated with the idea. So Ultima Online has always been this like game that I've known about but never played, and but it's always like had this like it's always been on a pedestal in my brain because it was the first MMO that I ever heard existed, and I probably like in my imagination built it up to be greater than it ever was. I don't know.
I would like to formally extend an invitation to join me in an Ultima Online game session. I'm trying to
Hmm.
do it every weekend. I'm definitely going to be playing tomorrow if you're interested. It takes you about 30 minutes to set up. It's free to download and all
Hmm.
that. Everything is circa 1998, so you get there in the game and you really
Is it
feel it.
actually 1998? I just pulled that number out of my like head.
Yeah, I think that the first version was 98. Their beta was 97, I believe.
Mm.
I actually joined late 98, 99 into the second age, the second patch.
Hmm.
So that's the server that I play on is the second age patch.
Okay,
So, and I still play it.
interesting.
I still love it. It's kind of relaxing.
Yeah, didn't they have a problem with like people killing off all the animals or something in
Oh
the game or
yeah, that's
whatever?
hilarious. Well, that was they never actually released with those features because yeah, as soon as they got the beta testers in, they destroyed the whole ecological system.
Hmm.
They basically scrapped those features. So isn't that a
Hmm.
shame? And it's like that's more or less what I feel they're working on right now with Subsumption in Star Citizen is just to try and create this what do I call it, like a diagenic kind of environment, a self-sustaining sort of thing where the
I think they're
NPCs.
trying to create, I guess, yeah, I don't know. With Star Citizen, I feel like they're trying to create a like living, breathing universe, but not that is like on a resource level constrained by reality. You know what I mean? Like, I think that they're trying to build a system that is in a weird way. I don't know. I am a little out of touch with some of the stuff they've talked about recently, but like, I do believe there obviously is supply and demand, right? Like in the game to a degree, as they've talked about, but there's also this idea that it's AI driven, not player driven. And so in that weird way, I feel like they're kind of got this like infinite bag of holding where they'll always have the resources available for the most part, but you can kind of nudge it up or down on the rarity of those resources based on player interaction. I don't know. Um, but so I think Star Citizen is going for the idea of like, okay, yeah, you could hunt the animals and maybe make them rarer, but probably never make them go extinct because it's kind of like there's magic behind the scenes preventing that. It's not real per se. At least that's how I've perceived it.
I think they're going to encounter the same problems, though. You know, like as soon as that Microtech Yeti is available
Hmm.
in game, people are going to
Hmm.
be getting their Valkyries ready and opening up the miniguns on them.
Oh
So,
hell yeah! There's like people be so bored that no one else to do. I do think that CIG has an advantage though, which is that long term their map sizes are quite large,
that's
and
true.
the
Yeah.
number of Yeti they could have on the planet and still feel somewhat rare will be high. So, um, I just think that because of that, like I don't know how big the Ultima Online map was,
Pretty
but
small.
people can only hunt animals to extinction when they outnumber them or when they are like there's a significant percentage of human population to animal population. So I feel like, especially since they're kind of populating the universe with probability waves for the most part, and less to do with like actual numbers. You know what I mean? There's not like they're gonna have like there's exactly 10,357 Yetis on Microtech. They're never gonna have that. They're gonna have like the probability matrixy curve thing of Yetis on Microtech is X, and it can approach zero but never reach zero. I don't know. Uh, who knows?
No, that makes sense. I think you're
Yeah.
right. It's funny that you're talking about rarity, though, because, like, I imagine that someday in the future we'll be able to, like, fly over the savanna biome and, we'll see all of these herds of animals or
Yeah,
something like
absolutely.
that.
I would imagine you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think that like again, I don't have any inside knowledge. I have no idea how they're building it, but it I imagine as they get to like building out more and more fauna based gameplay, um herd mentality. I mean, it would be hard to create a living universe without the concept of herds or flocks or group species mentality, right? Like where animals of a certain ilk hang out together. But you can still cover that, right? You can cover that with probability mechanics where it's like, okay, there's a probability of X percentage of like these kind of things in an area, and you would just as you fly over a savanna, there would be magically a herd would spawn into existence based on probability. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
No, I think that all
Maybe
makes
not.
sense. No,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
But who knows?
Who
I've never
knows? Who
I've never
knows?
built a game in my life. I'm not a game developer. I don't know how to build games. But
If you
I
could
would
build a
imagine they do something like that.
if you could build a game, what kind of
Mhm.
game would you build?
I mean, mostly Star Citizen. That was why I backed it. But I don't know, like what kind of game?
Like, would you build a space game?
Um, so yeah, I mean, historically, when I was younger, the game that I wanted was Star Citizen, which is again why I'm super passionate about it. The idea of a universe you can explore, land on planets, like be a person, right? Like that's super attractive. Um, I don't know. There's a lot of games out there that could be interesting. I think that not a space game. If not a space game, I would build like an immersive, highly immersive, like historical game, like of scale. So like there's already kind of reasonably immersive historical games, like you've got Kingdom Come Deliverance and stuff. Um, but I think that would be kind of cool, like maybe in a particular time set. I don't know, like to I've always wanted to like kind of feel like, well, what would it be like to live in Greece during the Peloponnesian War? And I've been playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey lately, which obviously is takes place during the Peloponnesian War, and is pretty interesting. And it's the first time I've never been to Athens. I travel a lot, but I've never been to Athens or Greece in real life or virtually ever in any kind of game. So Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the first time I've ever been to Greece in any manner, virtually or otherwise. Um, and it's horribly unrealistic and unimmersive in the sense that it's Assassin's Creed. But I remember actually kind of getting giddy, like going to Athens for the first time and going to the Prius and seeing the ships and talking to like Pericles or like Herodotus or whatever. or even Cleon, which is like one of the generals during the Peloponnesian War. Um, and I remember, oh wow, so cool. We're gonna meet this person that I've always read about. Um, and so there'd be something about that. I think like create a like slightly more realistic, highly immersive version of like history. There's a lot of value there um that you can't get any other way. There's no way to teleport you back in time to experience the way of life of a civilization like long gone. So, gaming, I feel like, especially potentially in VR in the future, is uh, a really powerful way to tell a story like that. I think, or to give somebody like a modicum of understanding of maybe life in that time period. Obviously, you're not really there, you're even in VR, you're going to be sitting comfortably in your air conditioned apartment. But I don't know. There's something about that that I think would be super fun or super intriguing. Like there's space and then there's history, right? You can't go back in time. So hmm.
The I'd say the Assassin's Creed games is what really pushed me into Star Citizen because
Mhm.
I vividly remember E3 one year and it was
Mhm.
like, oh look, it's another Assassin's Creed game where everyone was so excited and I'm like, it's just another Assassin's Creed game and I think Star Citizen was just like in its first year maybe or second year and it was hardly getting off the ground, but I find just a monotony in those games to be honest. But do you find a lot of significance in the historical value of Assassin's Creed?
Sure. I mean, to be honest, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the first Assassin's Creed I've ever played in my entire life. I've never played Assassin's Creed before. So I am coming at Odyssey not only from the, oh, it's cool, it takes place in Greece mentality, but also I just am not familiar with the game or the game mechanics. So everything's new to me. So it's unfair for me to say, wow, it's a great game. I mean, it is pretty good. But I don't know if I would feel the same way if I'd played 6 other versions of Assassin's Creed before I played it, you know? Um, but yeah, there's value in just the context and the history of it. Absolutely. Like, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, they got so much right. Like, they got so much right in the historical mindset of the game. Like, I've read a lot. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I've read so much about Peloponnesian War, but I have a lot. and um, and there's parts of like the game where you're playing, you're like, I know the story. Like there's one part where you're trying to convince people that, maybe they shouldn't go murder everybody in Mitylene, whatever, which is this, like city state that's decided doesn't want to be part of the Athenian alliance. And historically, in the real world, Athens as a democracy, a real democracy, a mob rule effectively, and getting into the whether we agree or don't agree in democratic process. Um, Athens had voted during the Peloponnesian War to kill every man, woman, and child in that city. They was like, we're gonna kill them all,
Wow.
and they sent their navy off to the city to go murder everyone. And then, like the story goes, the next day, maybe exactly the next day, because boats do sail quite fast back then. Uh, the city decided they woke up and they were like, you know what? I think we were overreacted. I think we overreacted. This is all a real story. This isn't fiction. Okay, they're like, we overreacted. We didn't want to kill everyone. So they decided to revote. They all voted. There's like Athens is a town of about I think it's around, I don't know exact numbers, but it's somewhere around I think 80,000 people total, but like maybe like 50 or 60,000, but it's like there's like 20 to 30,000 men. And then I think of the men, there's like usually about 6,000 people I think who voted at any one point in time. But a significant number of the decisions were voted on by a large percentage of the population on an ongoing basis. Um, so, anyways, these people would get on a hill and they'd all get together and they'd vote on something. And so they voted the next day, like, you know what, we're not going to kill everybody. We're going to go. We're going to only kill the leaders of the city. So, but they'd already sent their navy to go kill everyone in the city. So they voted to not kill everybody in the city, but the navy who had left already was already on their way to kill everybody. So they had to send another boat with double the crew so they could row day and night to catch up with the navy and tell them to not kill everybody. And to just to kill the top like 1000 or the top leaders of the city or whatever it was. So anyways, when I was playing Assassin's Creed, long story short, although it's a relatively long story, uh I was involved in that story arc. There's a very tiny piece of the game, but there's a story arc where you're like doing a side quest and it's like helping convince them not to go do that. And I thought that was really cool. And there's all kinds of parts of the game that like kind of interweave. I think it was Thucydides, I think, is the guy who wrote. He was a general in Greece around the time period, and he ended up either getting exiled from Athens, I think, or something, because people, if you were a general in Athens during that time period, you either got like murdered or exiled because of something that people didn't like. But he got exiled, and he ended up writing a book about the Peloponnesian War, and it's one of the source documents that we have today that tells us a lot about what happened back then. But anyways, yeah, super interesting stuff, and I love the game. I love Assassin's Creed because it's not what I would call an immersive game. Like at no point did I feel like I'm in Greece during the Peloponnesian War. It's over fantasized and romanticized and beautiful, hyperbolic in the way the mountains are shaped and stuff like that. Um, but at the same time, I got giddy, like, oh, I'm gonna talk to Pericles. Oh, this is gonna be cool. Like, I can't wait to see Pericles. I don't know. There was just there's an aspect. And I kind of want to play like Assassin's Creed Origins. I don't know when it takes place, but I heard it takes place in the Greek controlled version of Egypt. So like the during the Ptolemaic dynasty or whatever, like with that ended up with Cleopatra the 7th, I think, was the final ruler during that dynasty. But that could be cool. Like, I mean, just like, and then I heard, there's like Unity, which takes place in France. I don't know if it's during the French Revolution or something, but yeah, I think the historical contexts of the Assassin's Creed games are huge draw for sure, even if the gameplay is probably somewhat um repetitive. And that's why Valhalla sounds really interesting. Valhalla is like obviously during the Viking Age, probably 700 AD, probably 750, 700, 750. I don't know exactly when it's taking place. Probably all the way to I think the Viking Age kind of started to come to an end at around uh 1000, like 1000 AD or something, to like 1100 AD or whatever. But so I don't know what range it's spanning, but that whole time period is super interesting, and I would love to explore that. So sorry I rambled for a while.
No, it's totally cool. And besides, I'm no expert when it comes to Assassin's Creed nor history, so I do appreciate it regardless. But more importantly, I think that I really, really value education in games. Like I said when we were talking about Kerbal before, I learned everything I know about rocket science from Kerbal, years of playing Kerbal. And I wish for that in Star Citizen. I hope that Star Citizen just doesn't turn into a pew pew fest. I hope our brains can somehow develop out of an ape-like
I
state.
wonder how though. I mean, like, I agree though. I love that about games. I love that about Kerbal. I've played it a little bit. It does give somebody an intuitive understanding of the physics of orbits and space and rocketry and stuff. And Assassin's Creed. I even learned a few things when playing Assassin's Creed. Like where I was like in Odyssey, I was like, oh, I didn't realize this actually was the same time period or this person, whatever. And so I was like, and I ended up being like, this is wrong. And then I ended up Googling it and I was like, oh no, the game's right and I'm wrong. There's definitely like you definitely learn a lot playing these kind of games. That's a lot of value. And I don't know, Star Citizen, what do you think? Like they don't get the physics right in Star Citizen.
No,
They get Newtonian mechanics a little bit, right?
hardly. It seems to be like breaking down patch after patch. We get less
Yeah.
Newtonian physics.
Yeah, yeah, there's like in a weird way I feel like that they're teaching people like the wrong things more than the right things in
Yeah,
Star Citizen.
yeah.
um like the idea is like there's a Star Citizen has this kind of concept that gravity doesn't exist in space, and you're like, well, that's a lie. Like um or I don't know, obviously like the speed limit thing we just overlook, but
Oh,
everybody knows there's no
how do
speed
we
limits.
overlook that? That's everything. That is the root of the mathematical concept is the velocity, and we don't have velocity right now.
Well, we have velocity. It's just got a restriction. The speed of light is a lot slower. I don't know. No. Yeah, I know. There's a lot in Star Citizen. I think the thing that bothers me the most about physics in Star Citizen, and I try not to judge it too harshly because I know that there is a game under development and they are constantly adding more to the game. Like drag is becoming more and more realistic over time, for example. Um, and they're kind of tweaking the thrusters and stuff like that. And there are some really realistic things that they're doing that I think is really exciting, at least as far as I can tell. But yeah, you're right. There's like what I don't know, like the things that I find annoying are the reentry effects are a little annoying. They're there to like placate people for the most part. They look cool
They look
for the most,
cool.
and they've gotten better, so at least they only like happen at high speeds. Um, and the fact that like you can be floating in space and then all of a sudden cross some magic barrier and start falling towards the planet because you've entered atmosphere kind of annoys me a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's not so bad. I mean, these are like I said, in the grand scheme of games and whatnot, it's probably more realistic than most other games because every game has this like layers of like unrealistic behavior, partly because of limitations, maybe to due to game design, but also maybe just the rule of cool and fun. I don't know. What about you? What's your most annoying non-realistic thing in Star Citizen?
No, it's the velocity. Like
It's the velocity.
when I it's like the first thing I do on every new patch. I go to Segellion or Yella and I try and do
Mm-hmm.
Newtonian orbit. And if I can do it, or there's any caveats with it, because there always is. Every patch it changes a little bit.
Yeah.
That's where it gets me. And yeah, the entry effects kind of kill me too because we don't really reach hypervelocity speeds. I think the max that we can really do is like Mach 7 or something like that. I don't know if that's really hypervelocity or not.
Yeah, you used to be able to orbit pretty easily. I used to do
Used
it
to,
on
yeah,
day.
like 3, 4, I think, and then they got rid of it. Whenever the hover mode
Yeah.
came in, we lost it. Really.
Well, I used to be able to do it on like Delamar and
Yeah,
Daymar, certain moons, right? But
yeah,
the thing that broke it, because the Newtonian physics of the game still exist, but what they've done, I believe, is they've introduced drag even
yes,
in space.
yeah. That's the problem.
And so even when you're not in atmosphere, you're slowly slowing down, which technically drag exists everywhere, even in space. It approaches almost zero in most cases. So it's like not usually calculated. It would take forever, like lifetimes to slow down. Um, more than lifetimes probably, depending on where you are. So uh but like in the game you slow down relatively quickly. So you can't orbit. So if you turn your engines off, even if you're not in atmosphere, you'll just slowly slow down. And that's kind of annoying, I'll
Yeah,
agree. Yeah.
yeah.
You shouldn't do that. That should be, I don't know why they do that. You should just drift at a consistent velocity for the most part. Because when they used to have that, you could just like you literally would be able to like orbit planets,
Totally.
depending on the size of the planet, like whatever orbital velocity is of a particular planet. If you, because their speed limit was like is like what, like 1,300, 1,400 meters per second in the fastest ships.
There was an element of momentum as well. Like the only video I have on my YouTube channel is the last time I was able to conduct orbit. It was with an 890 jump, and that thing just had so much momentum. When he got the thing up to
Mhm.
speed, he just got into a perpetual state of falling. So
Yeah, although orbit has less to do with momentum and more to do just with pure velocity, but
it's a Star Citizen thing. I'm sorry.
yeah. Although what is interesting, momentum in a weird way is a more basic standard concept than velocity or anything else, or acceleration, like, or force, like whatever in physics. I don't know. I'm gonna let's not talk about it, but like it's easier to describe certain things in conservation of momentum than it is to be like, well, force equals ma and do all this other stuff. So that's cool. I think that Star Citizen is going to come back towards the light side of the Force, though,
You think
in
so?
the future. I think that
I'm worried about that.
uh, I think that they've got the right mindset and that we've deviated a little bit, but I feel like it's coming back. So they've talked about one thing that's really cool is they're talking about thruster efficiencies.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if they consciously did this, but they talked about thruster efficiencies getting worse in atmospheres, like as you go deeper in atmosphere.
Okay.
So like there's a lot of different things that affect thruster efficiency, but they said atmospheric pressure was going to affect it. And I thought that was kind of cool because I mean there's a lot of truth to that. Like the efficiency of your thruster or the exit velocity of the uh exhaust coming out of your thruster is somewhat related to the internal pressure of your thrust chamber to the external ambient pressure. Uh and so if you go deeper and deeper into atmospheres of higher and higher pressure, you'll technically get less thrust from your engine. And I think that's kind of cool. And so if they're doing that, that's very realistic of them. And also adds a lot of depth to the game because you could be like, well, let's go deeper into the atmosphere of the gas giant to get away from these pirates who are trying to kill us. And then the engineer will be like, Captain, I'm not sure our thrusters can go much deeper without us dropping and getting destroyed. Like I don't. There's all that. Then they're like, well, damn it, overclock them for some period of time so we can manage this, right? And so like, okay, fine, we'll throttle them up and overclock them, and you overclock them and you go deeper just to hold that, like to just get away from the pirates. But when you're overclocking and going deeper, your engines are overheating. They're prone to probably starting to fail, and you're risking this. Like you're rolling the dice. Like, and if your thrusters fail while you're down there before the pirates leave, you'll fall to your death and get swallowed by a gas giant. And that kind of gameplay is super exciting, and I think it's really cool. I believe that's what they're doing, and it's also relatively realistic in my mind. So I don't know, that's kind of cool.
That's kind of what excites me about gas giants is there's so many unknowns. Like
Yeah.
even in physics now, we really don't understand gas giants to the full extent. And to my knowledge, it's never really been simulated in a video game before. So
Mm.
if they can manage to accomplish this, I think they'll be the first.
Yeah, gas giants are super scary. IRL. Like I was thinking about like if Star Wars actually existed and I could go to Bespin and land on Cloud City, um, I that would be like the last place in Star Wars I would feel comfortable going. Like you can't get more. It's gas giants are about as close as you can get to a bottomless pit in the real world,
That's
in the real
true.
universe. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe a black hole you could argue, but like the like a gas giant, gas giants basically are just they do have something below the atmosphere, but the atmosphere is so thick in a gas giant uh that you would probably die of pressure, or you'd hit some sort of liquid water or something, an ocean or whatever, before you died, right? um Probably pressure and heat. You'd probably die before you ever hit anything. So you basically fall to your death, but you don't die from collision impact. You die from slowly being cooked and squeezed to death, probably. I don't know. Or you suffocate first. I don't know. Depends on what the oxygen is made out of and if you have an oxygen tank. But that would be a horrible way to go. And then your body would never be found. It's like sinking to the bottom of the ocean, but worse. Um, I don't know. That sounds scary. It's like a giant. It's like building a city over a giant abyss.
Yeah.
Like, why would somebody do that?
Actually, when you were describing that just now or illustrating it, I was imagining like a submarine game or like
Hmm.
an old submarine movie. You know, it's like you got to go down low and you got to hide from the submarine that's above you. You can hear like their
Yeah,
pinging coming down. It's like ping, ping. Remember
yeah.
those old World War II movies like that?
Why no? But why not? It's kind of cool. I mean, think about it. There's examples like you obviously Jupiter would be an comparable planet probably to Crusader. But you don't have to go to Jupiter to understand like atmosphere and depth and pressure and the dangers of it. Like, I mean, Venus is a planet with a very thick atmosphere compared to Earth. And so Venus is like on the surface of Venus. It's got like the atmospheric pressure is like 99 point something atmospheres. So it's about 100 times the pressure of Earth at sea level, like 100 times. Yeah, I don't know if you can imagine. There's a lot of pressure, and with that pressure comes great heat. It's like I'm gonna say this. It's gonna be bad because I think it's in Fahrenheit, but I think it's around 450 degrees Fahrenheit or something high. Like it's like basically like cooking like you cook a bread or cookies, and it might even be too hot for baking. Um, and uh, and that's on Venus. But the thing is that you go up 50 kilometers, just about 50 kilometers in altitude on Venus. So not super high, but 50 kilometers is quite a bit. I mean, 50 kilometers on Earth is like a lot. That's like the atmospheric pressure at 50 kilometers is minuscule compared to what it is at sea level. Like probably like you could probably boil water at room temperature at 50 kilometers on Earth. But anyways, um, Venus at 50 kilometers, the atmospheric pressure is actually one atmosphere, one Earth atmosphere, um, and the temperature of the atmosphere is about 50 60 degrees Celsius. It's all like almost like you can go just a little higher, slightly less than an atmosphere, and you'll be basically at Earth-like temperatures and Earth-like pressures, which is kind of cool because Venus is actually one of the most Earth-like environments. At 50 kilometers above the surface of Venus, it's one of the most Earth-like environments that we know of outside of Earth in our solar system. And the material that the atmosphere of Venus is made out of is like quite heavy, like I think carbon dioxide and I can't remember what else, but it's heavier than breathable air. Like whatever 21% oxygen and 70 some 70% nitrogen and all the other stuff that goes on would actually be considered a lifting gas on Venus, right? Because at the same pressure, it's lighter than the ambient gases that are on Venus at the same pressures. So if you built a city on Venus that had huge pockets of breathable air, uh, it could effectively be used to float like a blimp in the sky of Venus, and you could almost maybe build a floating cloud city uh, at the right temperature and the right pressures for humans to live and survive. Who knows what the future holds? But anyways, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm just rambling all the time on your show, but I think it's super fascinating. But it kind of gives you a sense of like, well, if at 50 kilometers, it's very habitable for humans, and you only go 50 kilometers down, and it's like 100 atmospheres and like 400 or 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Like it's only 50 kilometers. Then you can imagine going to like Jupiter or going to Crusader in the game on Cloud City and going down 50 kilometers. Like imagine the pressure change and the temperature changes that would incur with just 50 kilometers. It's not even that deep. So it'll be interesting to see what they do for the gameplay on that.
I don't see rule of cool fitting in here anywhere. This is hard science. This is like the physical constraints of our universe. Like you have to adhere to these rules. There's no rule of cool here. And I just think about again education or the sake of education in video games. It's an interface problem. Like you think about how education is conducted, in schools and stuff like that. I think it's way inefficient compared to if you were to, do it through a video game. It's like taking something through an oral pill, is compared to an intravenous.
Yeah.
You got to connect it directly into the education module, I suppose. And I hope they do that because Star Citizen has so much opportunity for that.
I think there's a certain there's different aspects. I think everybody learns through different mechanisms. I tend to learn really well through lectures, like listening to somebody talk about a subject more than reading. Although I find the value, the combination of listening to a lecture and then reading it and then listening to a lecture is a way to really burn it in for me. But there's something about doing, right, and this is one of the things I feel like the KSP gets really, is it KSP Kerbal Space Program, yeah,
Yep.
gets really does really well, which is that hands on. There's a certain group of people that A, learn really well that way, but B, even the people who don't, it's as an additive form of learning is really valuable, because it's like sometimes you can read as much as you want about a subject, you can listen to somebody talk as much as you want about a subject, but you're not going to learn until you like hold it in your hands and you like rotate it around and you squeeze it a little bit. You know what I mean? You throw it and whatnot. And there's something about computer games that in a lot of ways allow people in a very cheap and tangible way uh, interact with concepts that would be much harder to understand in a textbook or from a lecture. And so you get that with like Kerbal Space Program. Now, granted, you don't really learn how to build rockets in Kerbal Space Program. There's a lot more math and a lot more science that goes into it. But at the same time, I'm pretty confident that most people who've played Kerbal Space Program for a reasonable amount of time understand basic orbital mechanics, understand the concepts of delta V. You know what I mean? Like there's just a lot of like our momentum, and you know what I mean. There's a lot of like really like intuitive concepts in physics and in space travel and whatever like medium you want to be in, that I feel like computer games can kind of like uh, give people. And also obviously like people will only learn when they have a desire to learn, and so computer games also create a more fun and engaging way for people to learn. But I think beyond the engaging and the fun of it, games just give you something that you can, like a Rubik's cube, you can see and hold and play with, that is more conducive, or I think, is that the right word, I don't know, to learning. So that's just thoughts. But
Rendezvous. That was
rendezvous,
the
yeah.
the hardest part of Kerbal, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't explain that. You don't read about how it works on a piece. I mean, a genius could. Neil
Mm-hmm.
Armstrong could, right?
Yeah.
But like anybody else trying to read how rendezvous work, forget it. But you play it in
Yeah.
Kerbal, and even still, like seeing it, like how does this work? Doesn't
Yeah.
make much sense.
Absolutely. Like rendezvous are interesting. Like, but like even outside of like games, it's like the news. It's easy to rant against the people who don't know something or do. I'm obviously ignorant in a lot of ways, and I probably said things that are ignorant, uh, that I didn't understand were wrong or whatever. But like I read the news about like space related stuff, and like some article was writing about how um NASA is thinking about sending humans around Venus to get to Mars. as a faster way of travel. And I'm not going to even argue whether that is or isn't a better way of travel. I actually, I've heard, I know that you can use slingshotting to make it cheaper to get from point A to point B. I've never heard of it being used to like reduce the time it takes to get from point A to point B. I've always known it to be a relatively time uh, costly thing to do. But again, I'm not going to like argue against that. But the article was talking about um they're like, and they'll be able to see two Martian biomes or something in one trip. And I thought it was like really dumb because they use the word Martian as like this term to mean extraterrestrial because they were like, oh, they get to see Venus and Mars. And you're like, well, that's not exactly what the word Martian means. Or right, or like really dumb things like I think somebody quoted the head of the United Arab Emirates are sending they're sending a probe to Mars. Everybody's sending a probe to Mars this
Yeah.
year because it's the window, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think somebody the somebody quoted. I don't know if this person actually said it. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, and obviously maybe I misunderstand something, but they said that the reason you have to launch during this 2 year every 2 years is because the distance is greater between Earth and Mars at other times of year, and therefore it takes more fuel to get there. And effectively, that's not true. Like for the most part, you could launch towards Mars at any point in time, and the amount of fuel it would require would be very similar. But the time it would take would be a lot greater. So, anyways, it's just like one of those things where like everybody like I don't know. It kind of becomes frustrating when you like read articles, and maybe I'm wrong. You know, I could always be wrong, but my understanding is like that's not how it works. And I feel like that I don't know, maybe not maybe everybody doesn't have to know about rocket science in the world, but it's just crazy when you like read articles written by people who I guess are supposed to be more familiar with the subject because that's what they're writing articles about, that you kind of expect a certain amount of knowledge. And so sometimes you wonder like if they just played Kerbal Space Program maybe a little bit more or
Right.
like yeah, I don't
Right.
know, something.
That's so true.
They would be better off for it maybe. I don't know.
I think the
Hmm.
whole world would be better off if they played a little bit of Kerbal. It's good to
Hmm.
know how things work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think well, Kerbal Space Program 2 is coming out next year.
Yes. Well, we don't know that for sure, but I think it will. I'm so excited for it, man. I
Is it
like. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, is it worth playing KSP one or
I
whatever?
don't think so.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't
it's
think
like
so.
is I've heard KSP two is gonna be mostly like KSP one plus all the mods that people made for it.
Yeah.
Like it's yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how you do it. Like, you play vanilla KSP right now, it's kind of easy
Hmm.
mode, right? But if you
Yeah.
really want to be a Rocketeer, then you get the RSS expansion, and then you get all
Hmm.
the original equipment that was used in like missions, or I don't know,
Yeah.
that the Russians built or the Chinese built. Like, you get to play with all those toys. And I'll tell you one thing: I built the Starship in Kerbal, I think last year, with the Raptors, and it is a
Hmm.
wonderful spacecraft. You know, it took me a better part of a year to get to Duna from Kerbin, and it was really hard to do, but I did it in the Starship, and it hardly took me any effort at all, and plenty of Delta V to spare.
That's
But
awesome. I
yeah,
always get my Kerbals lost in space.
yeah,
Like I just like I send a Kerbal to space, they get stuck out in the middle of nowhere, and then I send a rescue mission to go rescue them, and they get stuck out in the middle of nowhere, and then then I just have like a large quantity of people with like expended rockets with no Delta V left, and I'm just like, well, that sucks. But yeah, that's crazy. Uh, um, yeah, but it's really cool to see what's happening in the world of real space flight. I
oh,
feel
I
like
know, I love it. I'm
in
so
the world
obsessed.
today.
I
Uh, it's just so cool. Like I don't think people understand how the world is going to change overnight, like pretty
Yeah,
quickly here.
yeah. End of year,
Like
I think. Next year, this time
yeah,
will be drastically different.
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, obviously you have like Starlink and things going up or whatever, but like Starship is obviously revolutionary how it's going to change humans' access to space. But even like SpaceX is like um Falcon 9s or whatever have already revolutionized in a large way access to space. But Blue Origin, Amazon's Blue Origin is like going to start launching, I think, 2021. So they're going to start entering in. They're using a very similar configuration to SpaceX. I imagine that they're going to be a pretty strong competitor to SpaceX, to be honest.
They better be.
Um, Well, they spent the money.
Yeah.
They're approaching a they're actually like the stealth horse right now. Like
Yeah.
I consider them the number one SpaceX competitor, and they've never launched a single ship to space.
They're just gonna go right to the moon. It's just gonna be one day. Jeff Bezos is gonna have a tweet saying, "All right, this time tomorrow we're gonna be on the moon."
Yeah. Well, like if you look at Blue Origin's like New Glenn, which is their big ship, it's a size wise, it's comparable to Starship. They're building a huge ship. It's huge, like size wise. It's way bigger than Falcon 9, way bigger than Falcon Heavy. It's comparable to Starship. And they're running on methane LOX engines just like Starship. There's a lot of similarities. They're planning on, I think, recovering and landing their boosters. Like there's Blue Origin is basically SpaceX but Amazon, and so we'll see what happens with it. But it's nice to know that there's multiple people kind of approaching it the same way. But what I think is crazy is like the ISS has been in space for what, like 20 years now or something. Like when did it get built originally? When was the first module launched? I think
Jeez, I'm gonna guess 96. I'm gonna look that up.
is it that old?
Yeah, it's pretty old.
Wow.
What was it? Harmony Unity module, I think, was the first one. Hold on, I really have to look this up now.
Yeah, look it up.
1998 is the first docking. Got launched December 4th, 1998.
That's crazy, and
That's
that's
Node 1.
22 years now, right?
Ooh. You don't need
22
to say
years.
that.
So obviously the ISS is getting like older, run down and whatnot. So we're still talking with it, but its days are numbered. I think people
Yeah.
they keep extending the life of it, but at the end of the day, it's expected to retire like within like 10 less than 10 years, probably even sooner. Like it's gonna go away. It's gonna burn up an atmosphere. I don't know how they're gonna disassemble it, but if you think about it, the entire ISS, I believe the internal volume of the ISS is like 1,000 cubic meters or something, which is not insignificant, but it's not huge. Um, and um and just to give you a sense of how space is changing for humanity, right? The ISS is 1,000 cubic meters, and it took like a decade or two to build, and it's old and falling apart. And one starship launching when it does start to launch in like a year or two or whatever it does, who knows? It's supposed to be sooner than that though, but is one starship is 1,000 cubic meters. One starship, one spaceship is going to be bigger or as big as the entire International Space Station. So if Starship just docks with the ISS, it's like is the ISS docking with Starship or is Starship docking with it? I don't know. But like that's one of those things is like what are space stations of the future going to be like? And
Yeah.
when I say future, I'm not talking about like our grandkids' futures. I'm talking about like literally like the near future. Um, when you have when the cost to orbit is 1/10 of what it used to be, when the size of spaceships are like 10 times what they used to be, then your orders of magnitude have been changed to such a degree that like this idea of having a 1,000 cubic meter spaceship or space station orbiting the Earth is going to feel antiquated. It's going to feel like back in the day, people used to camp in tents in space. You know what I mean? And then, the 2020s and the 2030s, you're going to see like large, I feel like space stations starting to be constructed of magnitudes much greater, like 10,000 cubic meters, 100,000 cubic meters of internal space. And this idea of being these cramped, floaty quarters of like a space station, maybe will feel like, wow, I can't believe back in the day when they used to have to rough it. You know what I mean? I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it's really interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the future for humanity, and the cost of space obviously will continue to dwindle. I don't think it'll ever get down to the point where everyone can go, but it's very easy to imagine it costing less than $1 million for a ticket, which if you live in a first world country, and you're extremely motivated and all you want to do is go to space with your life and nothing else, most people would be able to afford it at some point. You know what I mean? But obviously you'd have to be highly dedicated to get there.
Wheels
But
are
it's more
turning.
accessible than it ever was. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah, the wheels are turning in my brain after that statement. So I hear you. I hope they boost the ISS. I hope they don't let it burn up. I hope that.
You hope they keep it for a museum?
Yeah, I hope they boost it to a Lagrange point. I hope that it's just cheap enough to do that. I think it will be. I think it will
The
be.
delta V to a Lagrange is what, like depends on which Lagrange point. You have to go to a stable one, but it's at least 2 or 3 thousand meters per second, at least usually minimums. But I don't know. That The mass of the ISS is quite high, so the amount of impulse you'd have to impart on it to get those kind of delta V's would be reasonable. But I don't know. I agree with you. We spent like $100 billion to make it. We might as well try to save it. I don't know what it cost, but it was a lot. Hmm.
It used to be the most expensive thing that humanity's ever built. So I
And
wasn't
then
really.
that was before Star Citizen came along.
Oh God.
Just kidding.
Kidding, not kidding. But I don't think it's about money really. I think it's just
Mm-mm.
about I don't know, the heroic efforts of all the people who
Yeah.
sacrifice something for the ISS.
Money money can in some ways be a poor metric for measurement of effort.
That's
It
true.
is a measurement that it is, it's a measurement of value, but it's, and it captures a reasonable amount of like human effort and passion and desire, but I feel like it misses something too sometimes.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, they basically mothballed the Apollo program because of the budgets, and I think they did the wrong thing there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one thing that's super cool. What is really cool, I think, is the DARPA in the United States. Good old US of A. I'm sure other people are probably looking at stuff, but DARPA is the Department of Advanced Research, something, something. I don't remember.
Skynet or
Yeah.
Cyberdyne Systems. Sorry.
Yeah, or something. But the people who basically like give, it's a department of the government that basically funds R&D in the private sector in the United States to like say, hey, we would like it if you researched this kind of technology. You know what I mean? Because we think it has strategic importance to the U.S. And so then they pay companies to do that, and then they get the benefits of the research. Um, and I don't know what else DARPA does, but that's one of the main things they do. So, but DARPA recently announced a few weeks ago that they were looking for bids on contracts around nuclear thermal propulsion, which is super exciting because it's kind of been taboo. Nuclear thermal propulsion has been kind of taboo in the world for like
Isn't
the
that
last 60
sad?
years.
I think it's sad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it's the inevitability. So it's about what you use it for. So the thing is people, they think nuclear and they think, oh, it's dangerous and it's dirty, and there is always aspects of these kind of things. But you have to understand, space travel is multifaceted. There's getting to orbit, and then there's getting from orbit to other locations. Now there's always going to be a reasonable danger of using nuclear energy to get you into space because of the risk of explosion and contamination, right? um, but there's less of a risk if you're in space. So, and that's where nuclear thermal propulsion becomes super valuable, is really in space. So, because on Earth, we have lots of mass to use. We don't really have to be mass efficient because we just have to get to orbit, and then we can always refuel ourselves with more mass when we get back to Earth. But once you're in space and you're traveling from Earth to Mars and Mars to Venus and Venus to Jupiter or wherever you're going, right? There's not a lot of mass out there to like refuel your ship. So you care a lot more about mass efficiency. Um, so the idea of using nuclear thermal propulsion to get from Earth to Mars or beyond is super exciting, because it really is one of the few ways humanity's ever going to become multiplanetary. It'd be hard to do it in any kind of realistic way, I feel like, without it. Um, but that's the thing, is I don't think people, and I could be wrong, obviously, but I don't think people think about, well, why can't we use nuclear thermal in non-Earth environments? Because like, what's the worst thing that happens if your ship blows up in Mars? Like, it's not like anything lives there, at least so far as we can tell. you know, I don't know. And the advantages are so high. Like the advantages for nuclear thermal are like, there's always risk to reward, right? It's like, yes, there's a slightly added risk, I think, with nuclear thermal propulsion. We already, by the way, use nuclear propulsion in space. That's the thing that happens right now. We use nuclear electric in space right now, in probes. So it's not like we aren't using uranium in space currently. But nuclear thermal for traveling between planets and stuff like that is less. It's your risk to reward is way better, because your risk is lower, because when you do have a catastrophic failure, it's far away from humanity, and your reward is obviously super high, because your delta V's are way higher, and so there's a cost advantage there. So, and it would make it safer. Space travel with nuclear thermal would probably be safer than conventional bipropellant methodologies. But I don't know. Sorry, I cut you off, I think, didn't I? I don't know.
No,
What are your thoughts on it?
no, I agree. I think that ISRU is just a band aid. Really, I think that
Mm-hmm.
using technology like that, as cool as it is to develop, I mean, getting away from chemical rockets as quickly as possible, I think, is the strategy for success for the future. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know like how, obviously. Like even
Yeah.
SpaceX is planning on using bipropellant rockets for the foreseeable future, but that's mostly because there's so many regulations and laws around nuclear
I
propulsion.
know. It's terrible. You know, I think it's a conspiracy. I think the energy companies are working against the nuclear companies. And because here's the thing, like there really hasn't been a lot of innovation in fission reaction, at least not that I'm aware. Like they
There
always
has.
has there? They just haven't been used in
Yeah,
a production
there
sense yet.
has. It's actually really cool. So I live in Corvallis, Oregon. Uh, that's the town I was talking about. And even here, although Corvallis, Oregon, I think is actually one of the leading cities in the United States, which may be the leading city in the world in a very specific form of nuclear research. Um, but there are other places doing it. But there's this company here called what is it called? Uh, Nano. I can't remember the name of the company, but they basically build and they're designing micro nuclear reactors.
Cool.
So this is kind of the future of nuclear energy in a lot of ways for power. The biggest dangers of nuclear reactors is what happens when you lose containment, right? Um, and then you have a meltdown, and then so I don't know. I don't want to whatever, but like so you have uranium, right? A lot of uranium. Most nuclear power plants are like gigawatt or more power plants. They generate a significant amount of electricity. Gigawatts pretty big. Um, and in order to do that, they have a lot of uranium there. And what happens is like when you have a lot of uranium in one spot, uranium is obviously radioactive. So it radiates energy, and that energy that it radiates can hit other uranium, and it heats that uranium up, and then that uranium is like heating other uranium up. And so when you gather a large quantity of uranium in one location, uh, it are you looking at jet engines or what is this?
No, this is you.
Oh, this is the one in Corvallis.
This
Oh,
is
cool.
it.
I've
Yeah.
actually never looked at the designs of it. I know a guy
Yeah.
who works there though. But yeah, so like when you have a lot of uranium in one spot, it gets super hot. And the problem is it just keeps heating itself up to temperatures that are unimaginably hot, where it will melt through metal, it'll melt through concrete, it'll melt through the ground. And so when you get like these containment problems in large uh, power plants, the uranium just melts down through the ground into the core, down it gets into the water supply of the area, and then just literally contaminates the entire like landscape wherever the nuclear power plant melted down at. So it's really bad for the environment. Nobody can argue with that. Um, but the thing is all that danger comes with putting a lot of uranium in one spot, right? Uranium exists in nature. We don't make it, right? We mine it out of the ground, and and it doesn't seem to kill people or things in nature, right? And one of the reasons it doesn't do that is because it doesn't get hot, right? Because it's dispersed. It's got like one particle per million over large quantities of land, and so because of that, it never gets super hot. It doesn't melt through the ground. It doesn't get into the water tables or whatever. Um, and so the answer to nuclear energy is about from what I understand, building smaller nuclear power plants that are cheap to build, but have smaller quantities of uranium. So that way your surface, because like imagine a sphere, right? Like this is a pretty common thing, right? So you have a sphere, and the surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared, and the volume of the sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed, right? And uh, what that means is as you double the diameter, right, of a sphere, you have 4 times the amount of surface area of a sphere, but you have 8 times the amount of volume, right? Now, if the heat generated from radioactivity and uranium is based on volume, the amount of mass you have, right? The amount of heat density you have, well, the heat density stays the same, but the amount of total heat generated is going to be proportional to the volume. So that means that when you double the diameter of a sphere of uranium, you have 8 times the amount of energy being produced, right? But you only have 4 times the amount of surface area, and the heat can only radiate off of that uranium at the surface area, right? So you're producing more energy and radiating less energy, and therefore the uranium is going to get hotter. And then you double it again, it's going to get hotter, right? And hotter and hotter and hotter because that's just the nature of size. Like you volume never like that's why ants can carry 50 times their weights because they're small. Um, so anyways, the answer I guess to your the nuclear energy problem is just well make it smaller So that way, the amount of energy being produced is like on the order of 1 megawatt or 10 megawatts instead of a gigawatt in a single factory. And as long as you can get it to be cost effective, then you basically are producing nuclear energy in a way that never would allow uranium to melt down because there's not enough of it in one location to get super hot. I guess if that makes sense.
So that's new scale.
Yeah, NuScale. That's the
New
name of it.
scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, everything is the same. Normal fission reactor, just smaller.
hmm Yeah, but nuclear energy becomes safer when it's smaller.
Yeah.
There's just general law of like physics. It's just like, I mean, you can run the math yourself, but it's just like when things get larger, the cross sectional area or the surface area only grows at a square of its diameter, but its volume grows at a cube. And so as things become larger, they become hotter. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for us to produce a gigawatt of energy, really, because like our infrastructure can hardly support something like that. And like I think that we're getting more energy conscious. We're consuming less than we ever have before. So
Well, we're going to be consuming more and more energy in the future, probably. It's human nature to want to be lazy.
that's true.
But yeah, it's about being efficient, right? But if you think about it, right now, a large percentage of energy spent in the United States is spent driving in cars. And those cars are not charging on electrical outlets. Those cars are using fossil fuels and burning them. Well, imagine when we want to not burn fossil fuels anymore and we want to convert over to 100% electric cars in the United States of America. Everybody's driving to work using electricity. Yay, that's good. It's good. I agree with it. But uh, the amount of energy that we spend driving cars that are consumed in the form of fossil fuel will convert to the electrical grid. So our electricity grid is going to have to grow by a significant amount just to be able to charge all the electric cars that people are going to be driving over the next 10 years. So it might sound like we're using less and less energy, and we are. People are consuming less energy every year, not just for their own sake because they are environmentally conscious, but because the light bulbs and computers and
Yeah.
electronics are getting more energy efficient. So it just happens by nature. But just because we're being more efficient in our use of electricity doesn't mean that the electricity grid won't have to grow significantly in order to accommodate the cars that are going to be charging off of it and all the other new things that we may end up using electricity for in the future. So I don't know.
Interesting, though.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you've taught me something about nuclear physics today, so
I
that's.
don't know anything. I'm just like rambling.
I
But
didn't know that they were building these, or at least researching these reactors. I always read about those helium reactors, whatever they use, like some type of cold helium. It's not a steam generator at that point.
you're talking about like wait, helium?
I don't know. I'm just trying to. Helium is
Oh, okay.
fusion. I shouldn't say helium, but they use helium to cool it. I thought.
Mm,
Jamie looked this up.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. Helium would be a horrible. Well, unless it was liquid. I don't know. I think overall it would be not a very good uh, conductor of energy or heat. I don't know, but maybe it is. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. But it's not very dense, and so usually undense things don't conduct heat very well
It's
because they
called
don't have a
a
high specific heat.
It's called a gas turbine modular helium reactor, a nuclear fission power reactor design that was
Fission.
fission.
Yeah, that's really
Did I
cool.
say fusion?
No, you said fission, but I was just double checking.
Well, this was one of those conspiracy. I watch conspiracy theory videos. This is one of those conspiracy things. There, they said the energy company was kind of like hiding this technology that they're developing. I think they were doing a
Oh,
research in Texas, and they scuttled the whole project.
very rarely are energy companies going to hide things like this. It's possible. Obviously, conspiracies exist and they're real, but like it's if there's money to be made in something, people aren't like, oh, let's hide it. They're usually like, let's make money with it. So um, those kind of things are probably less common. But there are some times where I think certain interests suppress things. But
I
I
think
would
people
imagine
are
something of
lazy.
the what's that?
I think people are lazy too, though. It's like
Yeah.
if they change all of their technology over, then they have to invest a lot into it. Even though they could potentially make a lot of money out of it,
Mm.
at the same time, there's a lot of investment. There's a lot of risk.
That's true. And also, companies are run by humans, and humans can be ignorant and make decisions for unlogical reasons potentially.
Yeah.
So who knows? But there are like really cool. There's this company up in Canada, actually, not too far away from you, called General Fusion. I don't know if you heard of it. Um, it's really funny because way back in the day, in like 2009 or eight or something like that, I was reading like it is a nobody. It was a guy in his garage, and he had this idea for a fusion reactor. and it was super genius fusion reactor. And I was like, OMG. And I'm not like anywhere close to professional, but I did study physics a little bit in school, and I studied as a hobby since then. So I kind of like to like backseat physics things. And I was I was reading about this guy's like fusion reactor, and I was like, "This is a genius idea. This actually might work." And I got super excited about it. I started emailing the guy, and he would email me back, and we were like emailing each other a little bit, like having a conversation, right? Because he was
Wow.
a nobody. He was a nobody. Nobody knew who he was,
Yep.
and like I was like, your idea is genius," and like all this stuff. And I have my emails in Gmail with this guy now, like me emailing him and back and forth. And now his company's worth a ton. Jeff Bezos invested in it. It's like he's got this. It's a huge General Fusion's a huge company now in Canada, and everybody's backed it, and everybody thinks it's an amazing idea. And I'm like, yeah, I was first.
Yeah.
I have an email thread with this guy when none of you knew who he was. But his idea is actually really cool, and he's also building these like micro fusion. So like a lot of like fusion reactors like that are being built or have been built in history, especially the one being built like ITER over in Europe, or like the tokamak rings, like right where they basically heat up. By heat up, they accelerate particles up to extremely high speeds, and then smash them into each other in order to create fusion. There's a lot of other ways to get fusion reactions, but his method is like on a smaller scale. But he increases the pressure. Like if you have higher pressure, you need less temperature in order to create a fusion reaction. And I don't want to like go into all the detail because I've been rambling for hours on your stream already. But it's a super exciting company, and it's in Vancouver, Canada. And there's it's fusion, so we've been chasing fusion as humans for a long time, and it's unlikely that this guy's going to solve it, but it's got a high chance, like 10% maybe, you know what I mean? Which is a higher chance than a large percentage of other fusion like programs have had. uh, and it's like right in your backyard, so it's super cool.
Burnaby. It looks like they're in Burnaby.
Yeah,
$150 million they've raised so far. It looks
yeah,
like, at least according to their Wikipedia page.
yeah, exactly.
I
They're
think
like raised a significant amount of money, and they're like, he's just like a guy in a garage when I talked to him like originally. Hmm.
I honestly, I think that's one of the most exciting things that we're going to experience in our lifetimes.
Hmm.
Because I think that there's a commercial race towards the fusion. Um, there's a lot of, I think COVID's going to push this in direction too. When all the coal fire plants were shut down and our environment was cleaner for a month or so, I think that's going to
I
push.
don't know. We aren't there yet, to be honest. I
You don't
don't
think
really think
so?
there's a large enough forcing function towards fusion yet. And the reason I say that is because we are highly dependent on energy for our economy to thrive, but we're not an energy driven market. Like we're still labor driven for the most part. Um, in the United States and in most countries of the world. Which what I mean by that is if you look at the GDP of the United States of America, and then you compare it to the total income of all the people in the United States of America, a large percentage of the GDP of the country is, and I'm talking about the U.S. I don't know Canada. I'm sure it's similar. Um, the large percentage of the GDP is labor based. It's like 90% of all money and economy based in the United States can be attributed to man hours, people working to do something, right? And so because of that, like labor is where our biggest efficiency gains can be, right? Like removing people from the labor market by automating their jobs. I'm not trying to say this in like a horrible way. I'm just saying like if you purely looking at it from like an efficiency perspective, labor would be where how you improve like the efficiency of a particular industry. And so the forcing functions I feel like are still on the labor side of things. The country that will dominate, and there is a race, and even if it's peaceful or not peaceful, countries compete against each other to a degree for some aspect of like, oh, we want the best people, the brightest minds. We want to have like, whatever it is. Like, even if it's not in like a combative way, there's still a little bit of a competitive thing that countries kind of have, whatever. And so, um, there's a forcing function for societies to kind of like be more efficient than other societies, to be more innovative, to produce more for less work. Because if you can produce twice as much for the same amount of work as another country, that means you can buy twice as much from them for half as much work. And so there's a kind of a correlation there, and it kind of means that you don't have to work as hard, and everybody's lazy, and we all want to work less. I guess I don't know. I feel like it's somewhat human nature. Um, and so in that regard, yes, fusion's super important, but we're not really energy driven. So like if we reduce the cost of energy by like 50%, it doesn't really buy us as much as reducing labor by 50%, right? Like, oh, well, how much effort does it take to produce it from a manual perspective, even if energy costs remain the same? And so I think, and this is my own thoughts, obviously, but I think that there's a stronger forcing function towards labor, which means that things like automation and AI are you're going to see larger improvements on, because there's going to be more incentive for companies and uh, countries to invest in that mindset. So you're going to see huge advancements in AI, automation, self-driving cars, all these kind of things, right? In order to reduce the amount of hours it takes for people to provide a service or a good to somebody else.
I think that America is putting a lot of effort towards AI right now, but I think in Europe
So is
it's different.
China.
I think it's different in Europe when it comes to fusion. Like it just seems like all of these European countries are just putting money into it, and whoever comes up with the answer gets the prize. Really, that's how I look at it. I
Well,
don't
it's a
know.
little bit. I mean, the European fusion programs are also funded by the U.S. Like ITER, which is their big program, is got a large quantity of U.S. investment. So it's like U.S. is still involved in that. Like, you know what I mean? But um, I don't know. What other programs besides ITER do you know that they
I
have over
don't
there?
know. I
I'm
don't even know
curious.
if it's ITER. Yeah, talk to the wrong
Okay.
person.
Yeah, the
Sorry.
U.S. I don't know what percentage of the U.S. is involved, but it's significant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm sure Canada as well. Whatever Canada is involved in, all kinds of amazing programs. Like obviously they got General Fusion. You, to be honest, like after all of this, Canada is probably gonna be the one that invents it.
I
So
hope so. Only because the guy came from out of his garage. Because we need another garage guy story.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. The U.S. has enough garage stories. You guys, Canada needs a couple.
Well, the problem is we don't have enough garages, so
Yeah.
our igloos don't come complete with garages, sadly.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff coming on it. Like I said, I think that like something like fusion would be really cool, but we don't really need fusion right now to save the world. Like, and because of that, it's like it'd be cool to have. We're gonna need it someday, but we don't need it today. Most of the problems that we face as humans can be solved without it. Like, there's enough solar energy that hits the earth that we could literally just with solar panels power all of our needs with a very insignificant percentage of the earth's square footage. Um, and like 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers, I think, which just sounds like a lot, but it's not that much. I believe there's hitting the Earth's surface, there's about a kilowatt per square meter. So I don't know what 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers is, but a kilometer is 1,000. So it's like 10,000 meters by 10,000 meters, which is 100 million uh, kilowatts, which is 100,000 gigawatts or something. There's enough energy in 10 square kilometers of like Arizona to power the entire United States. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just with solar panels. So, well, obviously, if you had 100% conversion, so, but if let's say imagine solar panels, I think are like 20% efficient, like the good ones. So let's imagine they were 20% efficient. So instead of like 100,000 gigawatts, you had 20,000 gigawatts, which I think is still more than enough to power the United States. Off of like 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers. You don't really need fusion to get off of fossil fuels.
No, we
Like,
need fusion to go to Alpha Centauri. That's what we need
right.
fusion for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For space.
Yeah. And that's a big thing with Kerbal too. Apparently, is they're gonna explore a lot of far out engine technology, fusion and other types of nuclear.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, but I think that's also where the forcing functions come in. I think that humans, to a degree, are, you know, what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention.
oh
So,
yes, yeah.
yeah. So I think that that's part of Elon Musk's strategy too. I think is he's like, well, if we put people on Mars, they'll have to innovate. Like if we put people on Mars, then we will have to get better at space travel. There will be these really strong forcing functions that will make it so that you want to get cheaper trade. Martians will want to buy more product from Earth because they can't get everything there, and Mars will most likely have high technology that will want to be exported to Earth. And I don't know, like there would be, and I think that's the whole point for Elon Musk's perspective. Maybe it's a bad perspective to have, but there's this idea of like, well, if we just put people in a situation where they have to innovate their way out of it, then they will.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we'll get fusion after we like settle Mars.
That's
Maybe
a
it'll be
good.
like, well, now that we're on Mars, we need it. So
They really do. I mean, I know that he has plans to build solar farms out there, but I don't think that's really practical. I mean, maybe
it's
he
less
can do.
practical.
Yeah. Yeah, by a long shot.
The amount of what is the energy density at Mars's orbit? It's way lower because
It's way
again,
lower. Yeah.
again, like just like anything, like you you can take the same calculation with light, right? So it's like, you know how you double the radius or the diameter of a sphere, you get 4 times the surface area, right? Well, that you can have an inverse proportional relationship to the energy density of the sun. So if you double the distance from the sun, you'll have 1/4, well, 4 times the surface area. If you took a sphere, but that means the same amount of light that was in 1 square meter at a certain distance is now 1/4 the amount of light, right, at that same like square meter at twice the distance. So it means that the amount of solar energy, if you have like a kilowatt per square meter at Earth, I don't know how far Mars is. I have to double check the orbit, but if it were twice as far away from the sun, it would have like only 250 watts per square meter. So your like solar panels become like only 25% as efficient, like as efficient or good. So it really diminishes. Although the atmosphere of Mars is like almost non-existent, so I guess you would get some advantage there, but
Oh, then you got dust. So you have to go out there
yeah,
and you have to clean a couple 100 kilometers of
yeah,
solar panels.
or something. Yeah, exactly. What's the atmospheric pressure on the surface of Mars? Like it's like less than an atmosphere, I think, or something
Yes,
like
it's
that, or
almost a
less than like
vacuum.
1% or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like point oh something percent atmosphere. um, so, but I don't know. Still, what do you think about like Mars though? Like I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, I mean, people think about it a lot, I'm sure, but everybody's all gung ho to go to Mars. You have all these people who are like, yeah, Mars, I'm gonna go to Mars, and they signing up, whatever. Like a lot of people who like obviously don't know what they're getting into, and some people who do, who are like scientists or who are like engineers or people who are very adventurous and they understand like the nature of Mars, and so you have a lot of people signing up saying they would be willing to go move or live on Mars for some extended period of time. And but you don't seem to get like that kind of like desire or passion or motivation to go live in Antarctica, for example. Like there are people that live in Antarctica, but it's not like a lot of people, Like it's I don't know, it's like a couple dozen or like maybe 100 tops or something, and nobody settles there, nobody lives there permanently. But it would be way easier, like infinitely, like an order, like maybe 2 orders of magnitude easier to live on Antarctica than it would be to live on the surface of Mars. Like what why are we as humans so willing to go put 1 million people on Mars but not settle Antarctica?
Because we need a backup. Got to move that backup hard drive to somewhere that's safe.
I know, and Antarctica doesn't represent a backup, but isn't it weird that we have this entire continent that nobody wants to like settle?
That's
Yet we're
true,
like all
yeah.
gung ho to go live on a rock with like no atmosphere, super cold, like far away from help, no internet connection, pretty much none. If you live on Mars, you won't even be able to get online and play computer games. Pretty much, you'd be cut off from the world.
Yeah. You'd have your own internet. They're
Suck.
their own kind of branch of humanity at that point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. At best, you're like 8 minutes, like ping,
Yep.
like at best, like
Yeah.
like that's like once every 2 years you can like play a turn-based game with your friends. Uh, outside of that, you're like on the other side of the sun. Good luck even communicating. Like, will you actually be able to have like how do you bounce a signal across the sun? I don't know. Maybe the sun won't be in the way. Maybe the noise or radiation. Maybe you will be able to send a signal that far, but the distance is quite far. I don't know. Do we? We must. I think we communicate with our rovers that are on Mars like year round, so maybe that's not a problem. But I
Well,
don't
it
know.
would be for playing an MMO, that's for sure, or any
Yeah,
other
yeah. Obviously,
RPG.
the time, the latency would be really bad. Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. It's super cool though. We talked about Star Citizen at all this whole time? We did a little bit.
Um, yeah. Well, I had other things I wanted to talk about actually.
Yeah. Sorry, I hijacked your entire show.
Well, this is your show. This is TheFew. Your episode number 16. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
this
Sorry,
is your
chat.
show. You talk about it. Honestly, I love it. To be honest, I don't get to talk about this kind of stuff with anybody else, and
Yeah.
it's huge passion of mine. I mean, I don't know much about nuclear physics, but
Me either.
orbital mechanics is just I love it. I'm so fascinated by it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
did want to talk to you a bit about your cooking stream because I'm
Oh,
looking
sure.
at doing a little bit of that. And I went to school for cooking.
Oh, really?
That's my
Like,
source of academia.
what did you like go for like 4 years, or what is cooking school like?
No, I went for 1 year. It's
Okay.
nothing. But I worked in restaurants. Like I've worked at a bunch of restaurants all over the country. So it's wonderful.
When you go to cooking school though, like what is it like? What do you like learn? Just like kind of like French style cooking,
Yeah,
like with like mother sauces and like
yeah.
okay, like
And
how to like prepare various like meats, like how to like you know, I don't know, debone a chicken and things, or
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, there was like we had a butchering class every morning,
Cool.
and
I worked as a butcher for a little while.
yeah, that's a heck of a job there. But we used to have competitions on who could debone a chicken the fastest.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Do you like fully debone it? Like, or do you like just like, because there's different ways like to
yeah.
prepare a chicken. So,
There's different ways. No, we definitely did like the whole thing, but we did like the French one too, where you would like cut all the meat back, and it would just have the little stubbies, and be really presentable after you throw it
yeah,
in the oven and
like
look really
there's a
nice.
way to like cut a chicken and debone it, but you keep the chicken intact,
Yeah,
right? So it's like
yeah,
you strip the bones out of it, but but it still looks like a chicken when you're done. You stuff it and you like wrap it, and then you tie it off and you cook it in the oven like a roast, and it looks like a chicken still, but you can just cut right through it and serve it because
yeah,
it's boneless.
yep.
Yeah,
Have you ever done turducken before? That's how you do
I have not.
turducken. Oh
Oh, that's the
man,
way you do turducken.
that's how
I
you
haven't
do it.
done it.
It's so much fun. You got to try it one of
Okay.
these days. It's great
Mm,
for Thanksgiving. Like, if you got an old grandma that likes to do the same thing every year, well,
uh-huh.
you throw a turducken at her way, and I guarantee she'll love it. It's so much
Nice,
fun.
yeah. I love the cooking streams. I have a passion for food, of course, like a lot
Yeah,
of people. But I don't know, like um it's hard to get reasonably high quality food, especially where I live now, in this town. There's some good food here, but it's not like, I mean, after living in LA and New York for a while, you kind of just get like spoiled a little bit. Um but even if you do have access to high quality food, it's expensive. So it's like I've gotten, like, over the years, I've learned what I like, and I found that it's like, in certain ways, it's just easier to make it myself than to go to a restaurant and like hope that
totally.
they make it the way I want it, you know?
Yeah, you can do a better job yourself.
Yeah, well, because you know what you want, right? You know what you like. You put the right ratios of things that you enjoy and not what the chef like thinks is best. And um but what I like about cooking streams has been like, it has been a way. I don't do it super regularly, but like, every once in a while, it's a way for me to like kind of explore. Like, it's like, oh, I've never made that before. Well, let's try to figure it out. And so it's a way to like explore new foods and explore like how to do things that I've never done. Like, I learned how to make gnocchi for the first time from scratch on stream, or
Yep.
I made like that, like what is the beef uh what is it called? Wellington, beef Wellington. I made beef Wellington on stream, and I didn't think that was. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this. It looks really complicated, and I was like, there's no way this is gonna turn out okay. But it came out like almost perfect,
That's
and I was
good.
like super excited about it. And yeah, I don't know, it's like really fun. Well, so are you gonna do cooking streams?
Soon, TM. I mean, here's my dilemma: is it's got to be perfect. Oh, and it's
Well,
like,
you have an education. You're like, if I screw up, I'm the noob. If you screw up, you're like, I'm the formally educated chef.
yeah, I will be roasted. I guarantee you. And here's the thing: my COVID thing is about pizza. Like, you know how a lot of people are making
Hmm.
panic
Yeah,
bread during COVID? Well, I decided to make pizza. So I've been making pizza every weekend because I think the pizza in the city is pretty bad. So
yeah.
I just do my own version. But, I've been following lots of YouTube tutorials. I got some flour that I imported from Italy for doing
Nice.
pizza. It's wonderful. Highly
What
recommend.
kind of flour is like? It's not finely. It's like a not like a pastry pasta flour. It's like a.
It's called double O flour.
Oh no, there, yeah, Tipo 00. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a pasta flour. So it's like super fine, super fine. You can. I don't make pizza, so it sounds like it could be good. I'm just saying, like, Tipo 00 is considered one of the best flours for making pasta.
Oh yeah, well, it's the best for making. According to the internet, it's the best for making pizza as well. I think it's
Oh, there
Kanto.
you go.
Kanto, I think, is the name brand of it. I can't see it from where I
Okay,
am,
cool.
but highly
Yeah,
recommend. I think I did a little bit using all-purpose initially, and then I went to
hmm,
multi-grain because it's all that was available during COVID
sure.
because everyone was
Yeah, because
buying
everybody bought the other
flour.
ones.
Yeah, and then I eventually got this stuff, and I'm on batch number 3 now, using this special flour. So it's been really exciting.
Okay.
It's hard making pizza, man. Like, and you got to make it perfect as well. So, and tomato sauce is critical. Like, I'm trying to not cook tomato sauce at
What
all.
do you make with it? How do you make your tomato sauce? I've always been curious because, like, I have my ideas. Everybody's like, you got to use Marzano tomatoes or something. I don't know,
Yeah,
whatever. But
you
like,
gotta.
You got it.
You gotta.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's no way around it. There's apparently, and I mean, you can look this all up on YouTube. Maybe you saw it, but there's a company in
Hmm.
California, I guess, that makes just as good tomatoes as Marzano. But
Oh, really?
I can get San Marzano at the grocery store here, and they're
Hmm.
fantastic. I tried a whole bunch of tomatoes since getting them. They're $8 a can, so I don't really
Yeah.
want to buy them if I don't have to. But I
Yeah.
did them last week, and I don't think I want to go back. So I
But
really have to.
what's the difference between like what about canned versus fresh? Like obviously, like at the end of the day, they're kind of similar because you're cooking it anyways. Is there any advantage to getting a fresh tomato, or is it just you're going to get an inferior product because you're buying an inferior tomato?
So if I answer this question, it's just because I've done readings or I've watched videos on
Hmm.
YouTube. That's my
Okay.
education comes from. So
Okay.
it's like wine. You buy it from the region. This is a San Marzano. It comes from Italy, and they grow it in these Italian fields in this Italian
Yeah.
soil, and it tastes delicious. I haven't tried using fresh tomatoes yet, but this is what people have told me is like when you get them from Italy, it's like nothing else. And I'm not just talking about like the taste. Um, from my understanding, fresh tomatoes are way more moist, and you end up with just lots of water. You have to strain it out, or you boil it. I don't want to do either. So,
Yeah.
so I
And they call that like in wine, they call that like terroir or whatever. I think it's like of having a place or a region. Like when wine, when you get grapes that are like old growth, like where they're not irrigated, where the roots dig deep into the soil and they're like 100 years old, like the wine that you get from that has what they call terroir or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's like it's this idea of wine that has a place in the world. Like you can taste the region, and I'm curious, like maybe that is true. I don't know. I'm not like a tomato expert, but it'd be kind of cool. I don't know. Wine definitely has that. They say.
Why can't tomatoes have that? It's just another fruit, right?
Yeah, yeah. I guess except like wine. Again, I don't know, but like vineyards for wine, they like are old, right? They like generations. In fact, supposedly, if you try to plant new vineyards, right, those vineyards won't produce any good wine for a generation, which means the people who plant vineyards are usually planting them for their kids or their grandkids to enjoy, because it takes years and decades for those vines to get deep enough and mature enough to produce grapes that are of high enough quality for wine. And I wonder about tomatoes. Obviously, I think tomato plants tend to be like ripped out and replaced every year. But at the end of the day, I'm not arguing with the quality of the tomato. I've heard San Marzanos are amazing, and I just haven't really done any kind of comparisons.
I'm curious
I
to
actually
see. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I actually think I might have San Marzano.
Just
Like,
kicking around, hey?
yeah, like a can probably in the cupboard back there. I've never tried it. I think I just bought a can and I've never actually opened it up and tasted it.
So I get the whole tomatoes, and I just take them out of the can, and I just squish them up, and then a
Okay.
little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar, a little bit oregano and basil, a little bit of garlic,
Okay.
and
So
that's
you
it.
put oregano. Yeah. And I think
Yeah,
I would probably do that too. And garlic. I think those would be good for me.
yeah, that's it.
Like, but I've also heard people just like tomato and basil and that's it. I've heard with salt, of course, to like
Yeah.
enhance the flavor.
Well,
I've heard that, but I don't know if that's better or not. Maybe that's more classic or not. I don't know.
I tried it once, and first off, fresh basil is expensive. There's another $8, so I'm at $16
Yeah.
now just for a pizza for those two ingredients. So,
Yeah.
I didn't really notice the flavor improvement.
Mm, okay.
So I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, I think I would prefer the oregano and
Yeah,
the garlic and yeah, like mixed in because that's what I think that's what I grew up on, right? Like I grew up on American style pizza. Like there's pizza that is Napoli, right? Like Italian pizza, which I don't know if it was when and how that got started. And then there's the New York version, like when the Italians were immigrating to New York. There's this like new American style or Western Hemisphere style pizza that kind of like formed out of I think immigration. And I don't know if one is I don't know how different they are. I've never had a pizza in Italy, but I would imagine like the version of pizza that I like is probably the one that I grew up on, which is a West Coast American pizza. I don't know.
there's a lot to
Hmm,
it. I have been studying this quite a bit. I find it so
hmm.
fascinating just because it all stems around immigration. So it's just like different cultures come here, and whatever tools they had available to them, that's how they
Yeah,
define their pizza. So I'll say that my long-term goal is to do a Chicago deep dish, but I don't feel comfortable doing that yet. The New York style is the flat pizza, but the thing about the New York
yeah.
style is it's made on a grate, not a grate, but it's like a mesh wire kind of, and it
Mm-hmm.
allows the heat to go through it. And there's no
Okay.
other pizza that really offers that type of thing. So it's quite unique. It's got like a, it's almost like bruschetta, I suppose. You know,
Yeah.
crispy,
I,
crispy on the
I
bottom.
I consider myself relatively well acquainted with the New York pizza.
Yeah.
I lived in Manhattan for like 6 years, and
And did
I
you eat a lot of that? Is
yeah,
that
I
yeah?
ate a reasonable quantity. Yeah. But I also love like what I can kind of term a West Coast pizza, like not LA pizza. I don't know. I did live in LA for 3 years too, but I never really had any good pizza while I was down there. I'm sure there is though, but I just never had it. Um, but like Oregon or Northwest pizzas, the ones that I like, or like this, like kind of like a crispy like bottom where they're like almost like crackery crispy, but then like super chewy dough. It's like reasonably thick, but not super thick, you know? So it's like crackery bottom with like a chewy dough, and then like a reasonable amount of toppings on top, which I feel like as all of my travels, like I have not found that outside of like the Northwest. Like
Interesting.
I feel like it's kind of a Northwest style pizza, but I don't know.
Well, I know that
Uh,
you're kind of planning pizza for your cooking stream, and
I thought about it. Yeah,
yeah, I think it's really interesting. So you have to let me know how that goes. I'm really excited for you.
yeah. I wouldn't know what kind of pizza to make though.
Well,
I've
that's
thought
what you
about it.
make.
Like,
You make the Oregon pizza. That's
yeah,
perfect.
maybe I
I've
don't know.
never heard about that on YouTube. I've never even heard of a West Coast pizza on
Well,
YouTube.
I
I'm gonna
don't.
have to
I
look that
think
up.
of it as West Coast because I've never seen it anywhere else. It's not like everybody here makes it that way. It's just like I've had pizza over here that I grew up on that was kind of like that at various pizza places, and when I've lived other places in the U.S., they don't make it that way. So I guess I assume it means it's like a local flavor. I guess I don't know.
I really like how
uh,
every culture has like their own type of pizza. Like people often ask me what my favorite food is, and it's always pizza because pizza is so universal. Like everybody does it
I mean,
differently.
it depends how you define it, right? There's a lot of things that are universal. Like, I feel like potatoes are super universal, like super universal. Um, as like a general food. Like I've traveled like a reasonable amount, as I've said, but like for example, like if you go to like Europe, anywhere in Europe, you'll get potatoes everywhere. Uh, if you go into I was climbing Kilimanjaro in Africa, in Tanzania, and then when I got down from the mountain, I got invited to the house of one of the guides, and I had dinner with him. And what they had their dinner was potato. Okay, okay, that's cool. When I'm in India, right? I've gone to India a couple of times for various reasons, once for a wedding or whatever. And when I was there, like potatoes in every dish they have in India. I was in the middle of, so I went to the Philippines to go visit my brother. He was stationed over there at the time, and I wanted to go climb a volcano, and we were like going north, whatever, of Manila to Pinatubo, which had erupted like at the time it was like maybe 10 years before we had gone. And I talked to these people down near the coast, and they were like, well, there's this tribe of people who live in the jungle next to the volcano, like in the middle of nowhere. They don't, they're not like, they're true natives. Like they don't speak the national language. They speak their own language and whatever. And they're kind of isolated. And so, but I found a person who knew their language and was willing to introduce me to their chief. So I hired him, and we like walked into the jungle for a day, and we found this village that lived in the middle of the jungle, no roads or anything to get there, next to this volcano. And I talked to the chief through the translator, and we had food there. And what did they have? They had potato. Like they farmed their own potatoes. Like in the middle of nowhere, there's a jungle. These people who like have very little contact with the outside world, right? I even talked to people later who are from the Philippines, and I'm like, yeah, I went to the jungle and talked to the Ida, and they're like, what? You went to talk to the Ida? That's crazy. Like people in the Philippines don't even do that. And and like anywhere I've gone in the world, like potato, it's like just this like universal food. I feel like I don't know.
Grows on
Sorry,
Mars. Grows on Mars.
yeah. Well, yeah, and Mars. Exactly. I really do think potato somehow is just like that. Like, I mean, yes, you're right. Pizza, bread, right? Whatever. But it's like, for some reason, potato is that starch. Like, some places eat rice, some places have wheat based things, some people have corn based things, right? Because it depends on what region of the world. A lot of times people eat a lot of corn, don't eat the wheat, and people who eat wheat don't eat the corn or the rice, or whatever. Um, but no matter where you are in the world, I feel like potato is just somehow like everywhere. I mean, it depends on how you define it, but I don't know. Just an interesting thought.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. I was actually just trying to think of like who doesn't serve potato. All I could think of is like I don't think I've had a traditional Chinese dish that's ever
Yeah, I
had
wonder.
potato.
I mean,
Hmm.
China has adopted a reasonable percentage of like like foreign kind of foods over the years, but like I don't know. I technically I haven't been to China, so I can't really say. I don't know. I have a brother who went, but like it's been a place that I haven't had the chance to explore yet. I'd love to. So I don't really know what their cuisine is like specifically.
I
But
can think of a number of like Japanese and Korean dishes that use sweet potato. I think I've had like some Thai stuff that's had sweet potato as well, but
yeah. And like some places that don't have potato, they have like similarities, like like yuca root is like pretty similar to potato or some sort of root starch kind of thing, but potato itself is relatively like common. But you're right, I don't know. I don't know about China,
weird. So
but who knows?
you were kind of going down the talking about your mountain climbing career. I'm quite curious by that, and I'm sketched out by it at the same time. But I don't know.
Mm, yeah, I mean, what do you like? No, I mean, it's I've had amazing experiences. It's less like fanciful than you might imagine, but at the same time, it's been very enjoyable.
Like
Uh,
how does this happen from A to Z? Like I can't even imagine doing something like this. Like are you already thinking about your next mountain you want to climb, or is this
well,
just
yeah,
one week you're like,
yeah, definitely. I haven't been into the big. So there's different kinds of mountaineering. Um, there's there's like I got into mountains because I grew up in Oregon, right? So we're kind of exposed to some quantity of mountainous terrain. You live in British Columbia, so you understand there's mountains in your area, neck of the woods as well. Uh, and so you just grow up with them, and so you're like, okay, well, let's go hiking, and you hike, and then hike, and then the next time you go hiking, you go do something different. The next time you go hiking, something different, and eventually your hikes start turning into mountain climbing. And by mountain climbing, I mean like day hiking up mountains. Any mountain, pretty much in the in the up northern hemisphere, northwestern hemisphere, aren't really too bad. Alaska and northern Canada have some pretty insane mountains, though. So I say that with caveats. But most mountains are like relatively tame. I wouldn't call them big mountains. But so I kind of got into it because of that, I think. And then um, I don't know. I was fascinated with. I enjoyed some of the stuff that I did, and I was fascinated with the um what is it? The lore of it, I guess. I don't know. Like you read about like Edmund Hillary and all the other people like back in the day, like hiking and climbing the top of really tall peaks and the challenge of it and the adventure of it, right? There's this like kind of feeling of, and it is even today somewhat adventurous, um, especially in the in the true definition of adventure. Uh, People use the word too loosely nowadays. Let me just Google it because uh, there's different versions of the definition. Uh, but Google, obviously, just pulling it up, is like an adventure is an unusual and exciting, comma, typically hazardous experience or activity. Um, and so I feel like in order to really be an adventure, it has to have risk. If it doesn't have risk, it's not really an adventure. Um, and there's not a lot of adventures that we can go on nowadays in life or that are like fun and can go on. Like there are a lot. There's like a lot of dangerous things you can do in the world. You could be like, well, my friends and I are gonna just pack up and go down to Brazil, and we're gonna just build our own raft and float down the Amazon River. Like you could do that. That would be an adventure, and you. I don't know what the odds of survival are, but my point is, it's like so there are things you could do that are adventures, but like I don't know. I feel like it's difficult to find something that is risky and adventurous and exciting that you enjoy, but also somewhat controlled with a known quantity. Um, and mountain climbing kind of has an aspect of that where it can get extremely dangerous on some mountains, which I've never climbed. But it can get just fairly mildly exciting on mountains that are much safer, but yet still have that edge. You know what I mean? That make you appreciate the how like you are kind of like in the moment on a mountain, especially like if you're on a glacier. Like so I did some like climbing up in Alaska on like Denali. Um and the glaciers up there are um like a glacier, I'll just real quickly define as like a giant ice sheet, right? Um, and it's like it's snow that had snowed for a long period of time, but it never melts because it's too cold there. So it just every year more snow happens, and then that snow compacts and kind of turns into this really thick piece of ice over thousands of years or whatever. Um, but glaciers tend to, because they're ice, they're actually slow moving rivers, kind of in a weird way, right? Like even though it's ice and it's solid water, it still slowly moves down and gets replenished and replaced and stuff like that. And so uh you have ice falls, which are like waterfalls but made out of ice, but that like slow, like really slow, right? As in like they barely like, but they are dangerous to go through. But they're also like in the summertime, the snow on the surface of glaciers melt away and you'll see these cracks between the ice. There's like these huge crevasses is what they're called. Um, and they go down for like hundreds of feet, especially in places like Alaska. So when you see them and you're like, you have to walk over them, right? Because you have to get up the mountain. You can look down and it's just pitch blackness, just darkness, like the abyss below you, right?
That's cool.
Yeah, and so there's that, and it's not horribly dangerous, but it is. I was climbing with a guy, uh, um, a few, like I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago now, but we were climbing Aconcagua in Argentina together, and this Aconcagua is not horribly dangerous, but he was doing another trip down in Argentina, uh, the that summer after I had climbed with him, and he ended up falling into a crevasse and dying.
Yikes.
Yeah, but crevasses are super dangerous. Like glaciers in general are one of the most dangerous parts about mountain climbing.
Mm.
Um, there's a couple other things, but they are super dangerous. But yeah, but in general, like they're controllable in some ways, especially if you go prepared in a what do you want to call it? An expedition style where there's like you prepare ladders and ropes and you set up safeties and things like that. You can reduce risk.
That's what I
Uh,
always imagine. Like when I hear you talk stories about mountain climbing, I figure it's like a year out and I got to get my ladders, I got to get, all my ropes and stuff, but that's not how it is. You don't always do
yeah,
expeditions.
yeah, absolutely. And Argentina, dude, fast is very nice place. Absolutely. Um, so yeah, there's different styles of mountain climbing. There's two main styles, which is like an expedition style, and there's alpine style. Most big mountains cannot be climbed alpine style, unless you pre-acclimate. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know. I don't want to completely derail, but like mountains are extremely attractive in that regard because it's a form of isolation from society. It's a goal that you can try to accomplish. It takes a significant amount of time, a significant amount of effort. I remember, I don't know. I've felt that every single time I've pretty much climbed a mountain, probably, but to different degrees depending on the difficulty of the mountain. Um, And I don't have you ever climbed, I don't know, a mountain or gone for a hike up a hill, or like I'm just trying to understand any kind of comparative reference, frame of reference.
I've climbed the Grouse Mountain in Vancouver. So technically, yes, I've climbed a mountain.
Okay. And is that like, was it like 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours? Like how long of a
I
hike
think it
was
was
it?
2 hours, 3 hours. It was all day
Okay.
pretty much, coming up,
Okay.
come back down.
That's not
Yeah.
so bad. So what feeling did you have when you got to the top? Did
Death.
you
I
like
was dead.
feel some,
I
what,
was
what was it like?
I was a little nervous because I wasn't sure if I could get back down. That's the honest truth. They
To be
have,
honest, there's a truth to that. When you get to the top of a mountain, you're only halfway there.
yeah, that's right. Well, it's a long ways to
Uh,
go.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so you get this like, okay, so for me, like I've experienced it throughout my life in different stages and stuff like that. But it's a feeling proportional to the effort and risk and difficulty. Like, so if you imagine someone doing something 10 times harder, the feeling you get when you get to the top is like 10 times better. Um, and it can be addictive to a degree, but like there's this when you get to the top of a mountain, there's just kind of this like for me, one, it's this weight off my shoulder of just like, okay, we're there, we did it. We are now people who have summited versus people wanting to summit. So almost like a definition change of who you are as a person, which is obviously completely bogus and psychological. But there's just like, I'm a person who's trying to climb in this mountain, and I'm a person who has climbed this mountain. It's like almost definite objective change. And then And then just this like this serene beauty and peace of the moment of you've been struggling to summit, and then now you have summited, and you see the expansive like space before you because you usually are at reasonable altitude, knowing that you've basically reached the apex of your journey and now you're descending. And to be honest, no matter what happens, like it's behind you now. And um and depending on the difficulty, there's this like crazy sense of accomplishment that um you can probably get through other experiences, but I've never felt it so distinctly as I have with mountain climbing, so sharply, right? Of accomplishing something and feeling accomplished, because there's almost like this fine point at the very top of the mountain where it's like ac- accomplishment achieved, right? Whereas in a lot of other things in life, it's kind of like this like slow build where you kind of are accomplishing things as you go. I imagine maybe getting a degree like at a university where you're walking down and graduating could be somewhat similar, maybe
Hmm.
even more intense in some ways because you spent a longer period of time doing it. But there's something more tangible about being on the top of a mountain, right? Where you just like where you see the accomplishment down before you, like scrolling away, like in elevation gain. Um, and to think about that, like think about what you did, like climbing in I don't know in Vancouver Island, that one hill, and now imagine spending like $10,000, right, and flying halfway around the world, taking like a month off of work, okay, um and hiking and climbing for 3 weeks straight, over 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks sometimes, just every day, waking up with one goal, one purpose, which is to get to the top of a mountain, and your only sole focus of money and time and sweat and tears is to summit this thing. And it's a marathon. It's like a significant, it's more than a marathon because it literally takes weeks to get to the top. And um and the the uh and there's no guarantee, like especially big mountains, and this is one of the reasons I'm taking a break from them right now. Psychologically, they're very tough because it's a little easier to prepare yourself for the heartache and the difficulty, the sweat of it. You're like, if it's just putting one foot in front of the other, I can tough that out and do it, right? um but there's a psychological aspect of mountain climbing that's very hard for me to overcome, which is weather. So the weather on mountains is unpredictable, and you have to get permits and you have to plan out these trips like a year in advance or at least 6 months in advance. And so there's no way you can predict the weather 6 months from now or a year from now. And so you choose your window of like, I'm going to climb the mountain during these 3 or 4 weeks. Most mountains you get permits, and the permits only last 30 days. You only have 30 days where you're allowed to be on the mountain. Sometimes you get them for 2 months, or sometimes if it's like a big mountain in like the Himalayas, you might be able to get them for the season, which is like 2.5 months or something. Um, but you're kind of picking that window and you're saying, I'm going to go for it. And you spend all this effort. You spend 2 or 3 weeks getting up to high camp, which is like your summit attempt spot. This is like the last spot. This is where you pitch your tent and you just kind of like wait there for good weather. And if the weather's not good, if the wind doesn't die down or the storms don't die down, you don't go for the summit. It's too dangerous. Um, and so I was on Aconcagua, I remember, and I was at high camp, and we were like, it's like like 20,000 feet, which is 6,000 something meters. It's really high, and the air is super thin, so it's hard to breathe, and the wind's blowing at like 90 kilometers an hour, like constant, nonstop, but really fast. And like you peek your head outside the tent, and rocks will hit you in the face, kind of tiny little pebbles, but rocks will hit you in the face. And so you can't really leave your tent. It's too cold. Like you go outside, you have to bundle up super heavy. And even then, you like feel like you're going to freeze to death. So you kind of just stay in your tent, and the air's so thin you can't really sleep very well because when you go to sleep you breathe slower instinctively, I feel like. And so, but you're kind of at 20,000 feet, you always feel like you're drowning no matter what you do, just a little bit. And so you have a really hard time sleeping, at least I did. And then of course, while you're trying to sleep, the tent is just flapping around like crazy, like just really loud, right? And just like flapping around because the wind's blowing at 90 kilometers an hour. um And it does this for like 3, 4, 5 days straight, right? And also because you're at 20,000 feet, your appetite dies down. It's a pretty normal thing for people. Their body chemistry changes, and you actually, the thought of eating food kind of makes you want to throw up. So a lot of people lose a lot of weight when they climb mountains because you don't want to eat any food. So you start getting lower energy levels and stuff like that. But the thing about it, it's like for me, like I had a really hard time with it because it's like you're in your tent, and for the first day, you're like, fine, I'll just read a book, right? Like, whatever, I can't do anything. I'm waiting for the weather to clear up so I can go climb the mountain. But I'm just going to read a book. But then, like, that day goes by, the weather doesn't change. It's still horribly nasty outside. The day two, the weather's horribly nasty, but you didn't sleep that night because you couldn't go to sleep. You're just up all night in the dark while the tent's flapping around, going, I wish I could go to sleep right now, but I can't. And then day two, no sleep, and you're kind of still stuck in your tent. You haven't even left your tent except to go use the restroom every once in a while, pretty much for like 24 hours. So you're starting to get bored out of your mind and go crazy, but you also haven't gotten any sleep. But you also can't go to sleep because it's just too difficult. And but you're not awake enough to read a book because you're kind of too sleepy to read a book, but you're not like can't go to sleep. And then that whole day goes by, and then you can't sleep that night either. On day 3, you have no sleep. You haven't slept for 3 days, and the weather's still nasty, and you're just waiting for the weather to clear up so you can climb the mountain, and it doesn't clear up. And then you wait a 4th day, and the hard part about climbing big mountains is just sitting there in a tent, not being able to sleep, not being allowed to really go climb or hike, but just waiting. And you don't know, there's no guarantee. Like, you could wait there for a week and the weather won't clear up, and you'll never get an attempt on the summit, and you'll have stayed up for like a week without any sleep and have to descend the mountain having not gotten to the top. And there's no guarantee. And you spent $10,000 and you spent 4 weeks of your life for nothing. Well, not nothing. You experienced mountain climbing, but you know what I mean? There's that aspect of mountain climbing that I feel like it's hard to explain to people who haven't done it. And it makes it psychologically, it's much more difficult to climb a mountain than physically, I
Wow.
feel like. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I kind of rambled on, but
No, that was a great story. I never heard that before, so that's really cool. Honestly, though, it kind of makes me want to climb a mountain now because, as you have clearly illustrated, what I climbed was a hill.
well, I
So,
don't know.
no,
I
you're right
love
in
day climbs. I
comparison.
do a lot of day hikes.
Yeah. No, it was
Yeah.
good. No, I'd like to do something more. And like, I just did that 40-kilometer walk or whatever. And honestly, I thought it was pretty easy. I could have maybe done double that. And it makes me wonder how many kilometers do you think you'd walk when you walk up a mountain like that?
Yeah. It's really interesting because so like big mountains, it's not so much about distance, although you do walk a long ways. Like for Aconcagua, it's like a 3-day hike in just to get to the base of the mountain, and then you hike up the mountain. Um, but you when you climb a big mountain, especially expedition style, you climb it twice. So um, you have base camp, which is the base of the mountain. That's why it's called base camp. And then you have camp 1, right, which is like the next camp above base camp, and then you have camp 2, which is the next camp above camp 1, and you have camp 3, and then you have camp high camp. Some usually don't have much more than 3 or 4 camps, but um, so base camp, uh, you get to base camp, and then you're like, well, I'm gonna move to camp 1, but you don't move all your gear because you actually have a reasonable amount of gear. Sometimes it's like 90 pounds or 100 pounds or more. So you carry like half your gear to camp 1. And then you hike back down to base camp. So you hike all the way up to camp 1, and then you descend the mountain all the way to base camp. And then you sleep at base camp. And part of the reason for doing this is A, because you don't want to carry all your gear at once, but 2, because you're trying to acclimate. Like if you climb up to elevation, it's good for your body to like start building red blood cells and to handle higher altitudes, but you always want to sleep at a lower altitude than you hiked up to because it's easier for your body to heal itself and to rest at lower altitudes. So you hike back down to base camp and you sleep down there, and then you take a rest day, and then you go up to high camp and you move to high camp. And then when you're at high camp, the next day you move your stuff to not high camp, sorry, camp 1. The next day you move half your gear to camp 2, but then you descend to camp 1 and then you sleep at camp 1. And then you hike the other half of your stuff to camp 2. And then you keep doing this up the mountain. So you're literally going up the mountain, down the mountain, up the mountain, up the mountain, down the mountain, up the mountain, all the way to the top. So you really climb the mountain twice uh, the whole way up. So there's definitely a lot of walking.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Do you think you do more than 40 kilometers a day then?
No, no, no.
No?
It's especially at altitude, you go quite slow.
Yeah, that's what I wondered. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, there's a term that the guides I had in Africa used to always say that I liked, which is called pole pole. Just it's their word for slowly, slowly, is the key to success on mountains. And part of the reason is because altitude sickness,
Yeah.
anybody can get it, no matter how in shape you are, and it's really dangerous. I had a guide on Aconcagua get flown off on a helicopter from altitude sickness. Like anybody can get it, um, and um, it can happen if you push your body too hard. You're more susceptible the harder you push your body. So the idea is to just steady, slow paces. And when you're at like you know, above 5,000 meters, especially 4 to 5,000 meters, especially anything above 4,000 meters or equivalent around 12,000 feet, I feel like there's a significant difference in the way my body reacts. Anytime I've been above 12,000 feet for more than like a day or two, I usually like get something similar to seasickness for a day and then I recover. Um, but at those altitudes, you just start to like you breathe at 6,000 meters, you tend to breathe 3 times for every step. So instead of like normal, you're just walking and breathing. You have to start consciously telling yourself to breathe faster than you are used to, because um, there's way less oxygen. I think uh, at 7,000 meters, there's like less than 50% oxygen, like less than 50% atmospheric pressure at 6,000 meters is, oh, that's feet. 3 more, 1 second. Sorry, this is important. uh, feet, meters, 6,000 meters. Yeah, it's 46.6 kilopascals, and there's like 100 kilopascals effectively at sea level. So it's 6,000 meters, which is like the height of Kilimanjaro ish, or Mount McKinley, Denali, in Alaska. You're at around less than 50% atmospheric pressure, which means that for every breath you take, you're getting 50% of the amount of oxygen, if that, in each breath. So you have to breathe twice as fast to get the same amount of oxygen, at least, you know what I mean? So you just have to start consciously telling yourself, okay, I'm going to take a step, and then I'm going to go, and then take a step, and you're just doing that. And you would hyperventilate if you did that down lower, but at high altitudes, you don't hyperventilate. And so because of that, you just kind of like step 1,000, 2, 1,000, step 1,000. It's like zero, really just stepping like this fast up a mountain, just like really kind of just taking your time. But you surprisingly gain altitude faster than you'd think doing that, because you don't want to take very many breaks. You just kind of like, especially when you're climbing big mountains, you tend to climb in groups, which means you're roped up. So usually you'll be roped up in groups of 3 or 4. So there's like just because if you're on crevasses or glaciers, it's really dangerous to go without being roped up. And so you don't want to like stop every 15 minutes for a break. So you have to go for like an hour, hour and a half, and then take a break, and then an hour and a half. So it's important to go at a pace which you can sustain for a significant period of time.
When I flew airplanes, they wouldn't
Well,
let
that's
us.
cool.
They wouldn't let us to go above 10,000 feet without an oxygen. But you don't use oxygen when you go and do this
No,
stuff,
you
hey?
don't need it. I can see why they might want you to do it in an airplane, for multiple reasons. But uh, the one of the big differences is acclimation. So above 10,000 feet, unacclimated, you are unlikely, probably. I'm not an expert in the subject. You're unlikely to suffer issues, probably, but the percentage chances of you having issues increases above 10,000 feet without acclimation. And so they probably require you to have oxygen for those reasons. But when you do mountain climbing, especially something where you're going to go up to like a 20 something thousand foot mountain, you take days or weeks to get to the top. And because of that, your body slowly acclimates to the altitude. So 10,000 feet doesn't feel the same as if you just woke up in the morning next to the coast and climbed up to 10,000 feet in a single day. And I climbed Whitney once. I was living in LA and I climbed Mount Whitney in California. And Whitney is like the tallest mountain in the lower 48 states. It's like 14,500 feet, which is like, what is that? Like, uh, for a little, like 4,500 meters or something. I don't know. What is that? Is that 40? I think so. Yeah. Um, and so Whitney is like, it's not super tall, but it's like tall for like United States, like lower United States. Um, and I climbed that whole thing in one day, 17 hours up and down. Um, and I was obviously LA. I lived on the beach in LA, so I was acclimated to sea level. And I didn't get any sleep. I drove all night, and then I started climbing as soon as I got there in the dark. And so I did
What?
it like, well, I had to. Like, it's really horrible. It's just the laws in California are horrible, but they have a they you have to get a permit to go climb Mount McKinley, and the permits, they only have so many. They only let like 100 people climb it per year, which I think is ridiculous. They should let more people, but I won't go into that. Um, but the idea is that you get a permit, and there's a lottery system for getting those permits. You have to apply every year to get a permit to go climb Mount Whitney, and if you don't get it, then you have to wait till next year. But I didn't want to do that, so I just waited and waited and waited, and every day I would check the website to get permits, and a lot of times the weekend before, somebody might bail from their trip. They'll be like, "Oh, I don't want to go. I guess something came up. I can't go." And so a permit would just become available last minute. And so I did that. I was at work on a Friday, and a permit just popped up out of nowhere, and I was like, "Oh, I'll take it." But I ended up having to stay at work until like 10 o'clock that night working. And so I got off of work at 10 in the evening on a Friday, and then I got in my car and I drove north. It's like a 4.5 hour drive. So I got to the mountain at around like 2:30 or 3 in the morning, the parking lot, but you have to start climbing at 2 or 3 in the morning. Um, and so I just got out of the car and started climbing the mountain.
were you
Uh,
were you by yourself when you were doing this, or did you have a group
yeah,
of people
yeah.
with you?
Most of my mountain climbing is solo for the most part, except for like some of
Wow.
the big mountains. Big mountains you can't really do solo safely.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, I got there and I just started climbing it. But that trip, either because of the lack of sleep or because I wasn't acclimated or something, I remember feeling like at 14,500 feet near the top, I remember feeling like I was drowning, like I couldn't breathe. And so um, I can imagine getting in an airplane and going up to like above 10,000 feet and feeling like the air's pretty thin
Mm-hmm.
if you weren't acclimated to it. But then going up to like Kilimanjaro, I remember like uh, getting to the point on Kili, which Kili you don't spend a lot of time on. You spend like 7 days usually climbing. 6 to 8 days is the typical time frame to climb Kilimanjaro. Um, and I remember at like day 5 or something like that, I was at 16,500 feet at a camp on Kili, and I remember feeling like acclimated enough. I felt like I could run around and play soccer. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, it was the exact opposite feeling I had when I was on Whitney at 14,500. So I think the time of being up at high altitude, my body had just kind of slowly adjusted to the altitude, maybe like it's supposed to. Because your body does, I think your body produces like more red blood cells and stuff when it needs it, and a whole bunch of other things.
Do you do a lot of training beforehand before you do these things, like for the walking up California, the California mountain?
No, that one I did not do any training for.
Mm.
I try to like hike. I'm a little out of shape at the moment. I need to get back into shape. I'll probably do that here this summer. But like, in general, for that I didn't. For group trips, I definitely do because I don't want to be the one holding the group back.
Yeah.
But also for big mountains, it's like it's a lot of work, and you want to give yourself every advantage. So I do a lot of work to train for the big mountains. Um, but for like some of the trips, like for a lot of times I'll try to, like, if you just climb enough mountains at enough frequency, you never have to train because you're always in shape because you just got off a mountain. There's no better way to train for climbing mountains than to climb mountains. So the more mountains you climb, the less you have to train because you're just training by climbing mountains,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Um, but yeah, like, so as long as, like, for the most part, I'm like a little too heavy right now. I like weigh 215, which is like around 100 kilograms. Um, and my ideal mountain climbing weight, you do want to have some fat on you, but my ideal mountain climbing weight is closer to like 190 pounds. So I'm like 30 pounds overweight, which is like 12 kilograms or 13 kilograms too heavy, I feel like, right now. So if I was going to do a big mountain, I would have to actively lose around 30 pounds probably to feel comfortable doing that.
I feel kind of bad for you because I know you're a really tall guy, and I'm sure that adds a lot of difficulty to climbing out. You know, a guy like me, I'm sure I could just zip up there, no problem.
Yeah, maybe. There is something about height, like assuming you got proportional sizes. Uh, if you double the height of somebody who has the same proportions as somebody else, uh, the person who's double the height will be 4 times stronger in an absolute sense,
Cool. Man, I
right?
gotta go
So
up here.
yeah, the taller person will actually be bigger and stronger than the shorter person,
Oh,
but the person who's twice as tall, it will be stronger in absolute terms, like
yes.
the amount of weight that they can lift. Because
Yep.
strength is like kind of proportional to the cross sectional area of your muscle, right? Because the strands, for the most part, like how many strands you have that can pull and contract, right, it gives you to a degree strength. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so take my words with a grain of salt, but um the weight of a person increases as a cube of their height, right? So they'll be like 8 times heavier, so their strength to body weight ratio goes down. So you're right, like bigger, taller people tend to be less efficient and less capable when it comes to things that involve manipulating their own body weight. Even though they're stronger and more capable in a macro sense, in an absolute sense, you know what I mean? They're not as strong and capable in like a, oh, I'm going to do pull-ups or like, climb this rock wall. There is obviously an advantage to being longer for rock climbing because you can reach and grab things that other people can't get, but there's also a disadvantage because you weigh more for your given strength.
Sounds
But
good. Makes me feel
yeah.
good. Have you ever climbed a
Exactly.
mountain in Star Citizen?
I do, yeah, I love it.
Oh,
I go on all kinds of mountain climbing trips in Star
what?
Citizen.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do it in different things. I like climbing mountains and gray cats. I think that's more
That doesn't
challenging.
count. Come on.
Well, I think it's more challenging and it's more exciting than doing it other ways. On foot, it's kind of easy, and kind of sometimes gets boring. It can be fun, and then like doing it in like a cyclone is like obviously super cheap, but like
Yeah.
it can be fun because like cyclones can go straight at the side of like almost like a cliff, so you can do some really fun trips of those. But Gray Cat rock climbing and Gray Cat mountain climbing, I feel like are reasonably challenging adventures.
When's your next Grey Cat rock climbing
The thing is,
expedition?
they keep changing the physics in the game, and it makes it difficult. So you can currently do rock climbing with Gray Cats, not to the degree you used to be able to back in like 3.0s and 3.1s and 3.2 days, but you can do it. You just have to be a little more careful because it's like you want to go out there with a friend who can like knock you back over when you fall on your side and stuff like that. um, but yeah, it's and some of the rocks were kind of like right now you drive through them, but I think they were fixing that in 391 or 310 or something. I can't remember because you know how like some rocks are like just they don't have collision meshes or something. You drive right through them,
Yep.
which is kind of annoying. Can't really climb a rock if you can't drive on it.
The people from the Daymar Rally or the participants, they know each rock, which ones you can drive through, which ones you can't, and they have names for them as well. I know one
Oh,
is
so
called a.
that way when they're like racing, they can be like, you can drive that one, but not that one.
Yep.
Dodge that one.
Yep. Yeah. Well, they actually have. There's a driver, and then they have their co-pilot, and their
Which
co-pilot's
is
like,
normal, right, with
"You got
rallying.
a pancake rock up there," and they know the pancake rock you can drive through, so they do that. It's really phenomenal how these guys have done what they've done
Yeah, it's
for
pretty cool.
for an incomplete
Yeah,
game.
Daymar Rally is kind of a cool event for sure. I think that SC's like not quite there for it, but they've done quite a lot of they've done some amazing things with a little bit of with all the difficulties that you do have in the game currently. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's really tragic, like the what we had in February, because you're so right when you say Star Citizen's not there yet, because like we want it to be so badly, and we
Yeah.
some of us really believe that it is, but then when it comes to the finish line and it crashes and all the other
Yeah.
servers crashed and
Yeah, I used to organize huge events before the MRL existed, and I'm not like people have organized big events before I existed, so I'm not trying to like claim anything, but like I do know how difficult it is. Like I used to run these rallies called the Escape the Pit rallies on Daymar. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but like they were a lot of fun. We'd actually get 50 people in a server, and we'd have like a 40 something person rally race where like 40 people would be in cars driving across the surface of Daymar, and you had to drive all through crater fields, over mountains, into a pit, and then out of the pit. The out of the escaping the pit was the hard part, and it was also really fun to watch people totally fail at it. And then they get out of the pit and they get to a finish line, and most people never finished because it was such a hard rally that only like like out of 40 people, like 4 or 5 people could get to the finish line. But it was always kind of a frustrating in Star Citizen because like a third of the people would lose because their cars fall to the surface of the planet. You know what I mean? It was
yeah,
like, for no fault of their
of
own.
course,
They'd
yeah.
just be driving along, and all of a sudden they'd be sinking in the ground to like the unknown. I don't know. but
So
that's just the nature of the game.
you used to
So
do the Gray Cat route or Gray Cat sumo
yeah, sumos as well. I
once in a
did those as
while.
well.
When are you
Yeah.
gonna start running events again, or when's your next
Thought
event?
about it. The problem is Great Cat Sumo. I test it out. I test things every once in a while. To be honest, it's no excuse. I can innovate in new ways, but they change the physics of the game so much that Gray Cats don't behave the way they used to, and
Ah,
so Gray Cat Sumo as it did exist is dead currently.
ah. It
But
was so much
but
fun.
they're getting back. The
Yeah.
recent patch improved it a little bit, but it's still not there. So for a while there, the gray cats were too fragile and they would just explode. So you couldn't sumo each other because you just try to sumo and you just everybody would explode. Um, and now they're not too fragile anymore. But they were like you could just like hit each other all day and not move the other person. They were no longer there's no longer a way to like successfully win. It was just every gray cat match would result in a stalemate. Uh, and now you can push the other person around a little bit in whatever the latest patch is, but it's still not that interesting because it's too difficult to really successfully win. So as of right now, Gray Cat Sumo is dead,
Okay.
but maybe it'll come back. So
3.10 maybe we'll get it.
maybe.
Hmm.
So yeah, Gray Cat Sumo is dead. Gray Cat Rock Climbing is dead. There's a lot of things that I invented a long time ago that are dead. But that's the nature of a game under
Yeah.
development. So I'm not complaining. I think that the only thing that happened is I stopped innovating, right? So I have to like innovate some new sport based on the current physics or mechanics of the game. So there's always something there. It's a sandbox.
Yeah. Do you feel like
So
you have the energy to go back and keep coming up with new stuff?
yeah, I think maybe if I take a break, I've got so many passion projects going on right now,
Yeah.
though. That's been hard for me to I don't want to hate like streaming, and I love streaming, so I try to only stream when I'm really like feeling it, and not to like because a lot of times I'm like I'm working a lot on like studying rocketry right now, like quite a lot. So that involves like reacquainting myself with the mathematics in general, and like thermodynamics and fluid mechanics, and then of course just like rocket uh, design as well. Um, and I'm not trying to sound like that is something special. It's just it is a reasonable amount of just like nose in the book kind of grindstone work, and I'm super excited. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I've learned an amazing amount over the last 3 weeks, but it's one of those things where I'm like, well, do I want to stream and play a game today, or do I want to like learn something more about rockets? And so I tend to be like, well, I'm not going to stream tonight. I'm going to play, like read this thing that I've been working on or study this thing, and I've been super excited about it. I would like to get to the point where I could stream it, but like I'm not going to stream me studying. But if I got to the point where we were actually starting to manufacture rocket parts or something, it
That
could
would
be
be
kind of fun
cool.
to stream those kind of things. We have all the equipment, like it's really cool. Like I have several friends, but like that are in this position. But this one friend I'm working with, he's like owns a few companies and has a reasonable amount of like uh, free spending money. So anything we design as far as rocket parts, we could pretty much build. And so it's just about designing it. And we have machine shops to actually machine our own parts
No, that's
for
exciting.
anything we want. So we can build our own turbo pumps or our own thrust chambers and our own injector plates and everything. So it would be kind of fun. We'll see what we do, but I just I the it's not hard to build. It's well, I'd say that it's probably hard to build. I've never built one, so I can't say that it's not hard. But the math and whatnot, for the most part, it's not hard to make a thrust chamber that produces supersonic exhaust. Um, but it does get complicated when you're trying to make a rocket engine that's lightweight and has a high thrust to weight ratio and high efficiencies when it comes to mass efficiency. So uh, I have every if we wanted to, I could literally just probably design something on a napkin that would be fun to fire bipropellant through and burn and produce a reasonable amount of thrust. And it would be exciting to look at on video, which is probably what will be phase one of our project. But at the end of the day, that's the easy part. Like there's a complicated part there about like making sure the temperatures in the chamber aren't so hot that they melt the actual rocket nozzle itself. But you can control temperature. If you don't care about efficiency, you can control temperature with fuel mixture ratios, but that would reduce efficiency. But anyways, so the my point being though is like the exciting part would be as you try to like actually make the rocket efficient and like the Raptor engines are like 99% efficient or more than
Yeah.
99% efficient, which is amazing.
Yeah, they're
Like
amazing.
that doesn't sound like a lot, but like in the grand scheme of the world, like to get those kind of efficiencies, and the way they measure efficiency is kind of like there's different perspectives that you could look at the efficiency of the Raptor engine and say that it's not as efficient as they claim, but from a certain perspective, it is that efficient, and it's very exciting to get that efficient and to keep it the whole thing together and not melt itself down into a pile of goo. So, and that takes a significant orders of magnitude more complicated to engineer that than to just build a thrust chamber that fires exhaust out. So we're phase oneing it, and um, the initial design parameters that we're going with should be really easy. It'll get really complicated as we try to make the rocket more efficient with higher thrusts and higher uh, uh, ejection velocities or whatever of the propellant and whatnot.
I'm
But
so
it's fun to
excited.
learn about.
I'm so excited for the static fire, the hopeful static fire on Monday, I believe, for
Oh
SN5.
yeah,
Yeah,
I heard. Are they going to static fire? Yeah, they're going to static fire it on Monday or Tuesday. I
yeah.
heard.
150-meter hop they want to do by the end of next week. That's it.
That is exciting. Well, the thing is at the end of the day, the hot part of it, I feel like, is a known quantity for them. Like, like the hard part has been to the material sciences of it for them. Like, because what's different between Starship and I'm saying this in a layman's perspective. As much as I have been recently studying about rocketry, doesn't mean I actually know anything. I'm still very much a noob in the grand scheme of things. But like for the most part, what they're doing with Starship is like the big difference between Starship and the Falcon is the materials that they make it out of. Like, oh, they're making it out of steel, right? And they're using methane instead of kerosene or RP1, I believe is what Falcon 9 uses. So there's like a different fuel which burns differently. And then and in fact, I think methane is much superior to RP1 in a lot of ways, but it depends on what elevation you're at. But then there's the metal. So it's like so a lot of the issues they've been running into, I feel like in all their tests, has been with material sciences. Like, oh, the design we made couldn't handle pressures or whatever because of metal or because of or something. Like they're innovating in that sense. But once they get a ship that's together that has a certain like a mass, that they have a predicted mass and they have thrust that's got a predicted thrust, and the rocket engine doesn't blow up, and the starship doesn't blow up under pressure of having like their propellants in it, like the rest of it's all a known quantity for them. They've already hovered the guidance computers, the guidance systems, the thrust vectoring, that's all just copy and paste from the Falcon 9 program. So I think that once you do a static fire and the thing doesn't explode, the hop itself should be trivial in the grand scheme of things. Like that's the part that they already know how to do.
We'll see.
So
We'll see.
yeah.
Do you ever watch
I
Joe Bernard on YouTube?
do Joe who?
Joe Bernard. Joe Bernard.
Bernard?
No.
No, I don't. I don't know who that is. Who is he?
He's a guy who looks like Elon Musk, but he builds rockets in his backyard as well. But
Oh, that's cool.
I think he's more of a software developer because he kind of started off just making a thrust vectoring kind of solid rocket, like or solid fuel. I can't remember what that fuel's called, but stuff that you get from the kit rockets, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he started making software that thrust vectors those things. So, anyways, he's getting into more complicated. Anyways,
Does he build actual like liquid rocket engines in his backyard, or does he just build the solid rocket propellant?
he just does that because he focuses more on self-landing rockets. So he will make a kit, use a kit rocket, and then he's got his own stuff, thrust
How do
vectoring
you
to
make
land it.
a kit rocket with? I guess you could do it, but like the solid boosters, you can't start and stop them. So once you start them, they like ignite until they run out of fuel.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
there's huge disadvantages. There's huge advantages to them for boosters, but outside of boosters, they're not quite as flexible as
Well,
other forms of rocket engines.
you can't make a liquid propelled rocket in your backyard. I
Yeah,
mean,
you can. I
okay,
bet
well,
you.
go ahead and let us know how you make it. You should stream the whole thing. I'm
We
telling
probably
you.
will. I really, there's no reason why you can't. It's just people don't do it because it is orders of magnitude more complicated, but
Yeah.
it's totally doable. It's just more complicated. uh, it's more complicated and more expensive, but it's not like I haven't done it yet. So obviously, like I'm speaking out of my ass at the moment, but like I'm just saying that there's no reason on paper why you wouldn't be able to do it.
Just takes time,
Yeah.
and money, of
Yeah,
course.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's more moving parts. It's more complicated. It
Yes.
requires a lot more science than building a solid rocket engine, and a whole bunch of other things. But like, it's still not like there's nothing about a liquid bipropellant rocket engine that is unachievable with uh, in the sub $100,000 category costs. If you know what I mean, like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean. Which people have those kind of projects in their garage all the time. They're in those orders of magnitude. Not all the time, but you know what I mean. It's like it still fits in the backyard category if you wanted to. But yeah, anyways, I don't know thoughts. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like I said, I haven't done it. Like when I do it, then I'll be like bragging about it. But like, obviously, like I'm kind of full of it at the moment, and I know that. But I'm just saying I don't see any reason why you couldn't, which is why we're trying. So,
Well,
um,
I'm gonna link you Joe Bernard afterwards because I think
yeah,
you
that'd be
might get a
great. I'd love
kick
to
out
see
of
it.
it. I don't know. I watch a lot of these guys because it's stuff that, well, I'm just trying to learn really, and
Yeah,
I think I learn a lot through watching videos. I don't
yeah,
know.
me
I'm
too. I
awfully
love
slow
videos.
in these things.
Yeah,
But we're kind of coming up to some time here, so
yeah, it's true.
whoopsie daisy. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I
I
loved it.
I did want
Conversation's
to
been good.
I did want to ask you a couple of things though. What's your top three favorite ships from Star Citizen?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Number one, it's not flyable, is the Pioneer. Love it.
cool.
It's my favorite. Probably always will be. I don't know. Yeah, Pioneer.
Three ships. Three
Um,
ships.
what- I know. Starting with the
Okay,
Pioneer.
sorry.
Uh, that's the one that got me back in 2017 when they announced that and showed it off. I was like, oh, I'm coming back to Star Citizen. Uh, um, then definitely after the Pioneer would be the Hercules A4. What was it? Hercules A1? What is it called?
I think
The
it's A
bomber.
two.
A2.
Yeah.
Hercules A2 bomber. Yeah. That one. Probably just because it's like, A, it looks pretty good, but B, it's got like bombs and also has like a lot of space inside for hauling stuff. It looks good. It looks like a useful, fun ship. Um, I like big ships also, to be honest. The um the other one really, I mean, I have a lot of ships. But the Idris or the Kraken, I like group play. I like have multiplayer like things in general. And I think the Idris or the Kraken specifically would just create so much fun gameplay with like the ability to refuel and repair or potentially like ships in and really allow more like autonomy in the verse where you don't have to like always fly back somewhere every 3 seconds. So I'm really excited about those ships and I really like them. So those are the ones that get me excited, you know. So I don't really get too excited about some of the smaller ships like the F8C and stuff or whatever. It looks cool, but I don't get super excited about those ships so much.
I love how people are so excited about the F8. I'm like, where did these people even come from? Like, I've hardly even heard about the F8. I mean, I know about it, but I'm like, all of a
Yeah,
sudden it has a fan club. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
I do own two of them, but
No big deal.
yeah, no big deal. But I'm not like super excited about it. It is a beautiful looking ship, but it's like kind of like I don't know. I get excited about the big ships, about the immersion. Like the reason I backed Star Citizen was in 2012. I backed it a long time ago. Is specifically because I would be able to walk around inside of spaceships while they're flying through space. And so because of that, I've always been more attracted to the ships that allow for that. So like Idris's and things, because that's the dream that I wanted realized, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I get that. And I feel with
Yeah.
you on the Kraken. I like flying big ships too. 890
Yeah.
jump is a lot of fun, but I also look forward to the Kraken and the Pioneer.
Yeah. The Pioneers look so good. And the presentation for it was like really cool looking and
Oh,
inspiring.
wasn't it great? Ah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, I love that. Oh man, what did you think about the guy they had on the ship? I didn't barely watched the Star Citizen live today because
Yeah.
I was busy, but like I saw pieces of it, and the guy Gavin something I think on the
Yep.
show or whatever,
Yep. Yep.
and he like was like, yeah, I wrote and directed this movie or whatever. Did you ever go Google that movie?
No, I didn't.
I
What
did.
you
It's
did?
huge.
Is it?
It's really nice blockbuster movie,
Wow.
basically. Yeah, and it's got like a reasonably notable actress. Like I know one of the actors in it and everything. It looks like Netflix quality, like if not like better. It's like and he's like the writer and director and one of the producers and like and you're like holy cow like this is like a really it's not like a garage movie. This is like seems well funded, high budget
You know, that's crazy,
sci-fi.
but
Yeah,
I'm not entirely surprised. You know, just like
yeah,
this is the type of people Chris Roberts probably hangs out with, just
yeah. But
Hollywood personalities, you know?
yeah, but it's like it's one of those things where you're like, wow, like how does somebody with a full-time job at CIG also have the passion and drive to be able to produce something of this scale and nature? Maybe he
Yeah.
already had it started before I don't know. Sounds like he's been working at CIG for a long time though. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like,
I mean, he
yeah,
did what was like the first ship that well, he
I
did
mean,
the
archive.
Prospector, he did the Saber.
Yeah.
Um
Hey,
oh,
Phantom.
the Gladius. He did the Gladius. That was his first ship.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time, but yeah, archive is the name of it. And it's like I haven't seen it obviously, but it looks really good. And it's impressive. I mean, like, I mean, I've actually been a producer on a movie that some friends of mine made that was reasonably good for the budget. We spent like $6,000 or $7,000 making it, and it was really high quality, like full length feature film musical thing. But but this is like actually like well beyond super professional. Like you, it looks like something that like would come out of like I don't know, like I don't know what the budget was, but it looks like something that had a budget of over $10 million, kind of a thing. So it's
Holy
very impressive.
crap. I'm looking at this right now. Yeah, I googled it. 2020, it's
Yeah,
coming out this year July
yeah,
10th.
and doesn't it like it looks
It's
like
today.
really high budget?
Yeah. It's a real movie.
Yeah, exactly.
By
That's what
it
I'm saying. It's like you're like, how does this? Who is this person? This
what the
Gavin person?
why is this guy making spaceships for Star Citizen? This is
He's
crazy.
like spaceships for Star Citizen, and on the side he's Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, it's exactly right. What?
Yeah, like what? Why is Steven Spielberg working for CIG? Yeah, I was really impressed. I was like, I'll go check out this movie he's making, and then I looked at it and I was like, what the?
I don't recognize any of the stars in it
Oh,
though.
I do. The main
You do?
actor I recognize from
Theo
something. He's
James?
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Look up his IMDb. What has he been in? Because I've seen him in something else. Thomas something is Thompson. What is his name?
Ta- Theo
Oh, he's Theo.
James.
Theo. Yeah, yeah. Theo. Whatever his name is.
Yeah.
He's in something. Uh, archive movie.
I
IMDb. Let
don't.
me just.
I'm looking at this now. I don't recognize
I've
any of
seen
these
him in
movies.
something else. So let me just
Zoe. I don't know.
see. Let's see what I've
Underworld.
seen
Have you
him
ever seen
in.
Underworld?
Oh, maybe it was that. I don't know. Let's
Yeah.
see.
Oh,
Okay,
he's in
Theo
the new
James.
Dark Crystal movie. That's interesting. Oh, he's in The Witcher as well.
Oh, he's in the Divergent and Insurgent series. That's where I know him from.
Hmm.
There's like uh these movies about I don't know who what they were kids or something. They use oh yeah, is that about that girl who was like in some society that she wanted to escape or something, and they were like being classified as something sci-fi movie. It was a pretty big movie, like trilogy or something. I don't know, whatever. But he was one of the main characters in that. That's what I know him from. But still, yeah, it's got reasonably like not like super like A-list actors, but not like people who have been in other big movies of high budget in it. So
No, I think that's incredibly impressive. Yeah,
it is.
it's for real,
It's
and he
pretty
makes.
cool.
It must be really enjoyable to work at CIG if you're this kind of person. And you still just like making
Yeah.
spaceships.
Yeah. I mean, like I don't know like how well it's being received, his movie, and how much money it's gonna make overall, but it's like I would imagine he feels accomplished in the way that like writing a published novel would make you feel accomplished, that people are actually reading. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Totally
producing
agree.
artwork for the people to consume that is of your own creation. I mean, obviously he creates things for CIG, but at that point you're kind of like you're contributing art, but it's being filtered a little bit through like the company. But in this case, he wrote and directed a movie, so he's really the embodiment of the idea, right? He is the Chris Roberts of the movie, uh, and so there's probably something that's slightly more rewarding about that, I would imagine, and more difficult. But it's really cool.
Is there
No, that
anything?
what
Is there anything else that you gonna get plans to the future that we haven't talked about today? Anything on the roadmap of the few?
for I don't know for streaming and Star Citizen, I'm sure that something will come up. I've been long attracted to the idea of machinima and Star Citizen,
Ooh.
and I haven't ever pursued it yet.
Hmm.
I did pursue it once, obviously with Phantom a long time ago, and I do talk about it every once in a while. It is enjoyable. I did that like that one short Top Gun video a long time ago, and I remember having a lot of fun doing that and taking that, but to a slightly higher quality, and not copying necessarily movies, but creating original stories and content and character could be fun. It's a lot more work and maybe not. I don't know. I've toyed around with it. I'm sure other people are already toying around with the idea as well. But I think that Star Citizen provides a reasonable opportunity to create deep stories in the universe that exist with the characters that have emotion more than other games because of their facial tracking and some of the other stuff they have available to you. So
Well, Disco wants to make the airplane movie in game.
in game, there you
Yeah,
go. That could work.
I got to get in on that. I don't care if I have to be an extra or whatever. I want to get in on
Yeah.
that.
I'm not a great actor. I did a little bit of voice acting for Paul for one of his videos, his history videos,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I played some senator. I was like Senator somebody. Yeah. But what about you? What do you have any like goals or ambitions for the game?
Honestly, my big thing is star racing. So just kind of building this website that I'm working on it's like a community tool where people can post races and people can join those races or
Yeah.
whatever and try and gamify that and
That's
establish
kind
a
of cool.
reputation. Yeah.
Racing is coming out in 310, right? Or some aspect of it,
It's just
space
another
racing.
spin on scramble racing as far as I'm aware, so I don't have a lot of
Yeah, but nobody scramble
investment.
races, so we're hoping that this
I
one they
know.
actually do.
Yeah. I don't
Okay.
know. Honestly, Damar Rally is kind of the meat and the potatoes as far as star racing goes. They're the most active
Yeah. Yeah, so
big
far.
event out there so far.
What I've learned in Star Citizens community is the core group of people who are doing something one day will shift obviously
Isn't that
from
the
from
truth?
year to year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
which is cool. That's what I like about it. You know what I mean? Like everybody has to carry the torch forward.
I mean, this
Yeah.
is the second year of the Damar Rally, and they're gonna have a third, and
Yeah. Yeah.
probably have a fourth. So
Yeah.
I would say they stuck with it longer than others have as far as
Oh,
racing goes.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, they do it like that once a year, and it helps them quite a bit. Quite a bit. But yeah, obviously, like I mean, he's come to the main organizer, or whatever. He's come to most of the citizen cons and stuff like
Yep.
that, and he's been very involved. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Okay. Well, 2 hours and 40 minutes there. I think we did a
Yeah, it's
pretty
not
good
bad. Is that
job.
typical? Is that normal or?
Hey, everyone's different, you know. Some people have
Okay.
stuff
What's
to
the
say.
average length?
I don't know actually. That's a good question. It's probably about 2 hours 15 or 2:30 or something like that.
Okay. All
There's
right.
been
Well,
a
thanks for
handful of
having me. It was a lot of fun conversation, even if though we spent probably the majority of it not talking about Star Citizen.
who cares about that? There's so many talk shows out there for Star Citizen anyways, so
Yeah, yeah. But it was fun. I don't think I've ever actually like I mean we've talked before like at conventions and stuff, but I don't think I've actually sat down and talked with you in such detail for so long. So it's pretty cool.
well, you got stories, man, and I hope that other people hear your stories cuz
Oh,
they're
everybody's
pretty
got stories.
cool. I don't know, man. You got stories though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming and thanks for taking all the time. And yeah, we'll wrap that up there. So, ladies and gentlemen, TheFew, aka Luke, um, I'll have his. This will be on YouTube. I'll have his Twitch channel listed. His Twitter. He doesn't have a YouTube channel yet that I'm aware of.
I
Maybe.
do
Oh, you
actually.
do? Okay.
Yeah, it's the Few channel, I believe. It's got the Top Gun video on it. I've got 2 videos posted.
Okay, I'll have to go through that then. I missed that
One of
before.
my videos got written up by PC Gamer.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not a professional YouTuber. I posted 2 videos, but one of my videos got written about by a major gaming magazine.
Nice. Oh, that's
Yeah, so
amazing.
I was like, I'm retiring after that. 2 videos. I've already succeeded in life. I'm done.
Oh, that's great. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'll be sure to link that in the YouTube description and everyone will check
Yeah.
that out. And yeah, thanks again for coming by and talk with me today. And thanks everyone who watched. We'll be back here again next week. And we'll be talking about the gray market next week because I got someone coming in from the gray market. So that'll be
What's
pretty
that
cool.
mean?
Like the Star Citizen gray market, you know?
Oh, was that where the ships come from and
That's
go?
where the ships come from. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay. Well, thanks
All
again,
right.
guys. And I hope you have a
Thanks so
good
much.
Friday. And we'll see
All
you
right.
around the verse.
Talk to you later.